They say high school is the best time of our lives, but let's be real. For most of us, it was absolute hell. We had to survive tyrannical teachers, peer pressure, raging hormones, and that ever-present feeling that the world could collapse at any second. Now throw into that mix some actual demons, brooding gothic vampires, and an apocalypse scheduled for every Tuesday night. Welcome to the beautiful chaos that gave rise to an absolute icon, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This show didn't just redefine television in the 90s. It taught us that the monsters on screen are often perfect metaphors for the horrors of growing up. At first glance, it might look like just another teen drama, complete with questionable fashion choices and some very 90s special effects. But don't be fooled. Buffy delivers top-tier action, tons of heart, and relationships that swing wildly between eternal love and attempted murder. Think your exes were a nightmare? Just wait till you revisit Buffy's romantic history. So sit back, relax, and get ready to dive into the Hellmouth with all the nostalgia and sarcasm this saga deserves. Two idiot extras break into a school at night thinking they're about to have a romantic moment, but the blonde reveals her diet consists of hemoglobin and has the kid's neck for dinner.
Okay.
Cut to our protagonist, Buffy, waking up from a nightmare only to enter the real nightmare that is high school. She arrives at her new school already with a record stained as an arsonist terrorist because she burned down her old gym, claiming to the principal that the place was full of vampires, not asbestos. Right off the bat, she runs into Xander, a teenager with exploding hormones who drools over any living female being, and Cordelia, the incarnation of evil in the form of a queen bee. Trying to escape this forced socialization, Buffy goes to the library, where a Brit named Giles slams a book titled Vamper onto the table with the subtlety of a runaway truck, revealing he knows she's the Slayer. While Buffy tries to ignore her destiny, Cordelia shows up and says they found a dead body in one of the school lockers. Buffy goes to examine the corpse and finds vampire bite marks on the neck. At night, a mysterious stalker who abuses hair gel, named Angel, appears from the shadows to give her a necklace and warn her about something called the Harvest, acting like he's the gatekeeper of gothic truth. Buffy ignores the warning and goes to the club, the Bronze, where Willow, demonstrating a negative survival instinct, walks out holding hands with a vampire. Buffy runs to the cemetery to save the nerd, but ends up getting thrown into a stone coffin by a buff vampire named Luke, who is ready to turn our heroine into a juice box, but burns his hand on the silver cross necklace the hot stalker gave her, proving that fashion accessories save lives. Meanwhile, in sewers that smell worse than Xander's room, an elderly vampire named the Master is trapped in a hellmouth doing a Nosferatu cosplay. He decides to use Jesse, the useless friend who was captured, as bait to lure the Slayer. Xander, who has the tactical utility of a paperweight, decides to follow Buffy into the underground tunnels to prove his fragile masculinity. They find Jesse, who has now turned into a vampire and tries to eat his former friends, proving that friendship ends where hunger begins. They flee through a ventilation duct while the Master, pissed off, pokes a minion's eye out just for the lols and makes Luke his vessel. The plan is simple. If Luke drinks enough blood at the club, the Master gets out of his hole. The gang discovers the party at the Bronze is about to turn into an all-you-can-eat buffet. Buffy grabs her weapons from a secret chest in her room, leaves her mom talking to herself, and runs to save the day. Amidst the carnage, Xander ends up having to stake ex-best friend Jesse, getting over the emotional trauma in exactly 3 seconds. Buffy uses her superior IQ to trick Luke, making the idiot think a broken window is sunlight.
Sunrise.
While the monster gets confused by basic physics, she takes the opportunity to drive a thick, hard piece of wood through his back. The Master is left crying in the sewer, and Giles wraps it all up with typical British optimism, saying the world is doomed. Buffy decides that hunting monsters isn't humiliating enough and tries to join the cheerleading squad to reclaim her feudal life of popularity. Xander, continuing his pathetic saga of rejection, gives her a bracelet inscribed with "Yours always," securing his lifetime spot in the friend zone. During tryouts, a candidate's hands spontaneously catch fire because nothing says team spirit like human combustion in the middle of the court. Suspicion falls on a girl named Amy, whose mother was a cheerleading legend and, like every pageant mom, probably had a few screws loose. Witchcraft starts running wild to eliminate the competition. Cordelia goes blind in the middle of traffic and almost becomes roadkill, and another girl literally loses her mouth in a bizarre body horror scene. Buffy starts acting like she's on meth and discovers she's aging and dying rapidly due to a vengeance spell. The big twist, worthy of a low-budget telenovela, reveals that Amy's mom switched bodies with her daughter to relive her high school glory days, proving her midlife crisis is homicidal. Giles prepares the reversal spell while the witch mom tries to chop everyone up with an axe. In the climax, Buffy kicks a mirror, reflecting the hex back of the old lady, who ends up trapped inside a school trophy. The episode ends with the cup having terrified human eyes, which is considered perfectly normal decor in the hallways of this cursed school. Our favorite incel Xander starts the day having a heroic wet dream where he saves Buffy, but wakes up drooling on his school desk like the loser he really is. Biology class gets interesting when substitute teacher Natalie French shows up, giving every boy in the room instant puberty. Meanwhile, Buffy bumps into Angel, who warns her about a certain fort guy, but she's too busy admiring his leather jacket and the fact that he's into light masochism. Miss French decides Xander is the ideal snack for her science project and invites him to her house, probably because he reeks of virgin desperation from miles away. Meanwhile, Buffy discovers the teacher has a healthy habit of turning her head 180 degrees and eating crunchy cricket sandwiches. Giles, consulting his dusty books, confirms she is a she-mantis, a creature that mates with virgins and rips their heads off afterward, which would technically solve all of Xander's problems at once. At the teacher's house, Xander accepts a spiked martini, proving his survival instinct is lower than his libido, and wakes up in a cage ready to be post-coital dinner. Buffy invades the house armed with the strongest bug spray on the market and recordings of bats, because apparently giant insects hate bad electronic music. She kills the bug teacher with a massive dose of insecticide, saving Xander's sacred virginity. In the end, Buffy returns the jacket to Angel, trying to score a second date, while mantis eggs hatch at the school, guaranteeing that pest control in Sunnydale is a complete scam. While Buffy tries to balance her life as a slayer with the desire to kiss any mouth that doesn't have fangs, the Master, trapped in the sewer delivering dramatic monologues, prophesies the arrival of the Anointed One, which sounds like the name of a massage oil, but is just another Tuesday apocalypse. Buffy tries to have a normal date with Owen, a guy so generic he could be a background NPC, but Giles insists the end of the world is more important than her love life. They waste the night in a cemetery waiting for vampires that never show up, while Owen goes dancing with Cordelia, proving he has the refined taste of a doorknob. Determined not to die single, Buffy drags Owen on a super romantic date to a funeral home break-in, because nothing says I love you like corpses and the smell of formaldehyde. Inside, after almost turning into cold cuts at the hands of a buff vampire, Buffy throws the villain into the cremation oven, turning him into well-done barbecue.
Your turn.
Owen, instead of being traumatized like a normal person, decides almost dying was the best thing in his life and becomes an adrenaline junkie. Buffy realizes dating a guy with a death wish is too much work and dumps him. The episode closes with the Master revealing that the terrible Anointed One is actually a creepy kid who survived a bus crash, proving that children are always the true evil. The school gang goes to the zoo, the perfect place for bullying and childhood trauma. A bunch of idiots, including our glorious Xander, break into the forbidden hyena enclosure and end up possessed by primitive spirits, which practically just makes them act like jerks with more excuses than usual. Back at school, Xander suddenly gets confident, insults Willow by calling her plain white bread, and decides the school mascot pig Herbert would make great breakfast bacon. Buffy realizes Xander has swapped his needy loser personality for that of an aggressive predator when he tries to grab her in the staff room, but she delivers a no that involves throwing him against the floor. Principal Flutie, trying to exercise some authority, ends up being served as a business lunch for the human hyena gang, which honestly was the most useful thing he ever did for the school. We discover the zookeeper is a frustrated shaman cosplayer who wanted the hyena power for himself. At the zoo, Buffy makes the zookeeper absorb the spirits back, and his prize is getting devoured by the actual hyenas in a delicious poetic justice moment. Xander wakes up remembering nothing, playing the old selective amnesia card to avoid apologizing for trying to eat everyone, literally and metaphorically. In the end, everything goes back to normal, except for Herbert the pig, who is still being digested in Xander's stomach. The Master, that old wrinkled vampire living in the sewer, gets grumpy because the Slayer is killing his minions and sends the Three, a trio of warriors looking like rejects from a goth rock music video, to deal with her. Buffy leaves a party trying to avoid the smell of roach poison, gets cornered by the extras, but everyone's favorite emo vampire, Angel, shows up to take a beating in her place. They run to her house, and Angel explains that vampires can't enter unless they're invited. Angel takes off his shirt so Buffy can tend to his wounds, revealing a tattoo on his back, one he probably got drunk back in the 1920s. Buffy's mom arrives, and she hides the grown man in her room, resulting in awkward tension, where he sleeps on the floor to play the martyr. The next morning, we find out the Master killed his own elite warriors because they failed, proving that Hell's HR department sucks. Buffy tries to train with crossbows, but Giles insists she plays with a stick first. At night, things heat up. Buffy and Angel are about to make out, but he pulls away growling and shows his demon face, revealing her crush is literally a monster.
What? What's wrong?
He flees out the window like a dramatic teenager. Darla, Angel's psychotic ex-girlfriend, decides the best couples therapy is biting Buffy's mom. She tricks the old lady into letting her in and has a snack on her neck, but Angel arrives too late and Buffy finds him holding the body, assuming he cheated on his diet. Buffy, now fueled by hatred and stupidity, grabs a crossbow and goes hunting for her ex. They fight in an abandoned club. Angel explains he has a soul and suffers a lot, poor thing. But before she decides whether to kill or kiss him, Darla shows up with 2 pistols John Woo style. But when she tries to shoot Buffy, Angel proves he's over the toxic relationship by driving a stake through Darla's heart. In the end, they decide dating is impossible, share a goodbye kiss, and the cross on her neck burns his chest, proving that this love literally hurts. We flash back to 1418, where an idiot named Carlo swears eternal love to a horned demon named Moloch and dies in exchange. Some priests trap the beast in a book and hide it in a box, hoping no one is dumb enough to open it. Cut to the present, where Willow, the supreme nerd, decides to scan the book onto the internet, releasing the demon into the only dimension more chaotic than hell, the World Wide Web of the 90s. Willow starts an online romance with a guy named Malcolm, unaware she's swapping textual with an ancient demon. Giles tries to warn them that computers are the devil's creation, but the computer science teacher thinks he's just an annoying boomer. Meanwhile, random students start acting weird, carving letters into their arms and trying to electrocute Buffy, because apparently the demon controls online simps better than a digital influencer. Buffy discovers her friend's virtual boyfriend is dangerous, but the demon Moloch has already ordered a robot body from a bankrupt factory. He kidnaps Willow, all happy with his new scrap metal body, and kills his own servants to show who's boss. Buffy and Xander storm the place, while Giles and the tech pagan teacher try to perform a ritual to delete the devil's file. Buffy tricks the buff robot into punching a power box, blowing Moloch into little pieces of scrap. The next day, the main trio realizes their love lives are complete trash. Willow fell in love with an internet demon, Xander likes insect women, and Buffy wants to hook up with a corpse that drinks blood. They laugh to keep from crying, realizing they'll die alone or devoured. A maniac watches a ballerina stretching, but the real horror is Cordelia singing off-key at a talent show. The new principal, Snyder, a fascist dwarf who hates children, forces the gang to participate in the show if they don't want to be expelled. Enter Morgan, a ventriloquist with a wooden dummy named Sid, who has more personality and drive than half the male cast of the series. Someone kills the ballerina by ripping out her heart, and Buffy starts suspecting the horny dummy has come to life for a Chucky remake. Things get personal when Sid breaks into Buffy's room at night to watch her sleep, probably looking for wood to polish his knob. Buffy tries to alert her friends, but no one believes a piece of wood could commit murder. Xander steals the dummy for Buffy to investigate, but his owner turns up dead and brainless. Buffy and the dummy fight, but they discover they are on the same side. Sid is actually a demon hunter trapped in a toy body, which is the most ridiculous yet brilliant plot at the same time. The real killer is the dopey-looking magician who needs organs to stay human. In the talent show climax, the magician straps Giles into a real guillotine because apparently safety regulations are optional at this school. Buffy, Xander, and Willow storm the stage, save the librarian, and Sid the dummy jumps on the magician, stabbing his heart and finally finally freeing his soul to die in peace. The audience applauds, thinking the homicide is part of the show. The episode ends with the trio performing a Greek play so bad it makes you wish the demon had taken them too. Buffy's life turns into hell when lucid dreams decide to invade reality, starting with spiders crawling out of textbooks, which is basically the definition of public education. While Giles tries to be useful, he suddenly forgets how to read, becoming as intellectually capable as a TikTok influencer, while Xander lives out nobody's wet dream by appearing in his underwear in front of the whole class, showing off his twig physique and negative dignity. Things get more traumatic when Buffy's dad shows up just to destroy his daughter's self-esteem, proving that supernatural monsters are child's play compared to parental neglect. Meanwhile, reality collapses. Xander is attacked by a killer clown while stuffing his face with chocolate, and Willow panics at an opera, proving theater is torture. They discover a boy in a coma named Billy is projecting his nightmares because an abusive baseball coach, nicknamed the Ugly Man, beat him up for losing a kid's game. In the cemetery, the Master takes advantage of the dream mess to bury Buffy alive, and when she crawls out of the grave, she returns as a vampire, fulfilling Willow's supreme gothic fantasy. The gang decides to wake the kid from the coma through psychological violence against the coach. Vampire Buffy beats up the villain. Billy wakes up, and reality returns to normal, with the coach getting arrested and Xander admitting he needs intensive therapy because he felt a disturbing attraction to the undead version of Buffy. Cordelia Chase continues her campaign to be the most insufferable person on the planet, humiliating any living being that breathes near her, while Buffy tries to investigate why students are taking beatings from floating objects. The Slayer suspects ghosts or Greek deities, proving she failed history, but the truth is much more depressing. The culprit is Marcy, a girl so absolutely generic and devoid of charisma that physics itself gave up on her and she became invisible. While Cordelia worries more about her popularity than her own life, Marcy decides to turn the prom queen's face into modern art using surgical instruments, writing threatening messages on the walls like a poltergeist with a teaching degree. Buffy discovers Marcy wants to mutilate Cordelia to teach a lesson about empathy via flying scalpels. In the school boiler room, Marcy tries to gas the Scoobies, but Buffy, using her heightened senses and probably the smell of the villain's cheap perfume, manages to locate the invisible girl and resolves the situation with a blind brawl, kicking the air until she hits flesh. In the end, government agents show up not to arrest the psychopath, but to recruit her for a school of invisible spies, where she can finally read textbooks on assassination and feel special, proving the government loves disturbed people. The apocalypse arrives just in time for prom, because of course it does. Giles reads an ancient prophecy revealing Buffy will die at the hands of the Master the next day, which causes a mental breakdown for our heroine, who throws her cross on the ground and decides to quit the world-saving profession to focus on buying dresses. Meanwhile, Xander tries to escape the friend zone by working up the courage to ask Buffy out, but gets rejected so politely and painfully that his soul practically leaves his body. Vampires the AV club, and Buffy, seeing there's no escaping the script, puts on her prom dress and marches to her death like a badass blonde lamb. She invades the Master's lair, but the decrepit old man uses cheap hypnosis, bites her neck, and leaves her drowning in a shallow puddle, fulfilling the prophecy while he flees to the surface. Xander and Angel arrive too late, finding the protagonist's corpse, but Xander, refusing to accept that the only girl he loves died without kissing him, performs desperate mouth-to-mouth and brings her back to life. Buffy wakes up stronger, angrier, and ready for violence. In the library, a giant tentacle that looks like it came out of some sketchy hen bursts through the floor, announcing the end of the world, but Buffy catches up to the Master and throws him onto a piece of broken wood, turning the season's supreme villain into bone dust.
Go there.
With the enemy skeleton decorating the library, the game decides the best way to process the trauma of almost dying is to go to the party and dance like nothing happened. While Summer in Sunnydale is slower than the average viewer's love life, Xander and Willow decide to play cinema in the graveyard, proving their concept of fun is as dead as the tenants of the location. In a moment of tension that only exists in Xander's head. He puts ice cream on her nose, almost leading to a kiss, but a cock-blocking vampire appears. Fortunately, Buffy appears out of nowhere to save the useless duo and drops a cheesy catchphrase, pretending she didn't spend the entire vacation acting like an untouchable diva in Los Angeles. At school, Principal Snyder continues his crusade against adolescence, while Buffy trains by punching dummies with the fury of someone in urgent need of therapy. She has visions of the Master, that old vampire she killed, proving trauma is her only long-term relationship. Meanwhile, Willow tries to recreate the ice cream moment with Xander, but fails miserably because her charm is in the negatives. To make the public humiliation worse, Buffy goes to the bronze and decides to perform a sensual dance with Xander, grinding on him just to leave Angel and Willow looking like fools, while the viewer squirms with secondhand embarrassment. But the fun ends when Cordelia is dragged into a dirty basement, where idiot vampires try to resurrect the Master using his bones and the blood of people close to him. Buffy crashes the party, realizes she was duped, tortures a vampire for info, and rushes to stop the ritual. She finds the Master's skeleton lying on a table, and instead of a civilized conversation, resolves her psychological issues by turning the old man's bones into dust with a giant sledgehammer, in a fit of rage that would make any construction worker proud. In the end, everyone goes back to class pretending nothing happened, while the villain's leftovers swear eternal revenge. On any given night in the cemetery, Angel and Buffy are discussing their relationship like a telenovela couple until she falls into an open grave and realizes someone stole a corpse, because in Sunnydale, not even the dead get any peace. We discover the thieves are Eric and Chris, two virgin nerds and incels who, unable to get a girlfriend in real life, decided to build a Frankenstein woman in their basement using pieces of girls. The genius plan? To make a companion for Chris's zombie brother Daryl, who looks like a science project gone horribly wrong. Meanwhile, Giles tries to flirt with Miss Calendar with the social skills of a potato, and Cordelia finds a severed hand. Buffy and the gang discover the psycho nerds need a fresh head to complete the flesh blow-up doll. And guess who the perfect candidate is? Cordelia's airhead, of course, since the brain wouldn't be missed. At the football game, zombie Daryl kidnaps Cordelia for the grand finale, taking her to a lab that catches fire faster than Buffy's reputation. The monster realizes he's too ugly even for a girlfriend made of scraps, and decides to die burning while hugging his incomplete waifu. Angel, in a moment of pure male fragility, confesses he's jealous of Xander because he can walk in the sun, proving immortality doesn't cure low self-esteem. Principal Snyder, in a power trip, forces Buffy and the delinquent Sheila to organize parent-teacher night under threat of expulsion, because mopping the floor is clearly the solution to indiscipline. Meanwhile, a bleach-blonde punk vampire named Spike arrives in town running over signs and common sense.
Home sweet home.
He invades the lair of the Anointed One, that annoying kid leading the vampires, and promises to kill the Slayer on Saturday just to show off his toxic masculinity. On the night of the event, Spike decides waiting until Saturday is for patient people and invades the school with his gang, turning the parent meeting into an all-you-can-eat neck buffet. Buffy shoves the adults into a room, while Xander tries to use Angel to trick Spike, but the vampire sees through the act immediately, since Angel's acting is as dead as he is. In the hallway, Buffy takes a beating from Spike, but is saved by her mom Joyce, who decides to stop being an extra and slams an axe into the vampire's head. Humiliated by getting beaten up by a suburban mom, Spike flees. Back at the lair, he decides he's tired of taking orders from a child and puts the Anointed One in a cage, hoisting the kid up to be toasted by the sun like a marshmallow forgotten in a campfire, ending the episode with a barbecue of an insufferable villain. The school decides that mixing teenage hormones with cursed artifacts is a brilliant idea, so they drag the gang to the museum. While Buffy discovers she's hosting a foreign exchange student and Xander displays his pathetic jealousy, the delinquent Rodney decides to steal a plate and ends up freeing an Incan mummy that's been dry for centuries. The mummy looks at him, decides any vessel will do after a centuries-long dry spell. At the bus station, the mummy intercepts the real exchange student, sucks her soul too, Xander, who hasn't had a female look at him without pity city since nursery school, immediately falls in love with the millennial killer. Naturally, Willow is fuming with jealousy in the corner, realizing Xander would rather throw himself at a reanimated corpse that feeds on human lives than acknowledge her existence. While Giles discovers that the mummy's so-called bodyguard is in town, trying to stop her from sucking the population dry, the fake Empata keeps draining everyone's life in the school bathroom because maintaining that peach fuzz skin is expensive. Xander, thinking with his little head, invites her to the dance, and she accepts, probably seeing him as a walking juice box. It all ends at the museum, where Buffy tries to stop Xander from getting the kiss of death. The mummy tries to suck Willow, but Xander, proving he has sawdust for brains, offers himself in her place. The Incan princess gives it a go, but Buffy separates the two, and the mummy turns to dust, leaving Xander with yet another romantic trauma for his collection, and Willow wondering why she still hangs out with these idiots. Buffy and her subjects are at an Indian movie screening, with the blonde complaining she wants to be a normal girl, ignoring the fact that kicking on dead ass is the only personality she has. Meanwhile, Cordelia decides high school boys aren't up to her standards of superficiality and goes hunting for college guys at a frat house full of rich, suspicious playboys. Buffy tries to make out with Angel during patrol, but the vampire plays the mysterious goth card and runs away, claiming the age difference, which is code for saying he doesn't want to go to jail. Frustrated and needy, the Slayer lies to Giles and agrees to go to the frat party with Cordelia. There, Xander tries to infiltrate to play the hero but ends up dressed in drag doing a dance for the Muscleheads, proving his dignity is purely theoretical. The frat playboys, who are clearly compensating for something, drug the girls' drinks and drag them to the basement to be offered as a snack to Makita, a giant snake demon. Basically, they trade virgins for money and corporate success, which explains a lot about capitalism. Giles, Willow, and Angel storm the place to save the day. Buffy wakes up hungover, realizes she's chained up, and decides to turn the snake demon into a belt and boots. She grabs a sword from one of the rich kids and slices the beast in half, destroying the demonic pyramid scheme.
Let her go, Wormy.
In the end, Angel asks Buffy out for coffee and she plays hard to get, pretending she wasn't desperate for a minute of male attention 5 scenes ago. It's Halloween in Sunnydale, the only night monsters take the night off, except for Principal Snyder, who forces the gang to babysit kids. A chaos mage named Ethan opens a sketchy costume shop, and our heroes, with the collective IQ of a doorknob, buy everything there. Buffy dresses as an 18th century lady to impress her vampire boyfriend, Willow dresses as a ghost slut, and Xander grabs a toy gun to pretend he has masculinity. Ethan performs a ritual to the god Giannis and transforms everyone into their costumes. Xander becomes a real soldier who understands military tactics. Willow turns into an intangible but incredibly sexy ghost, and Buffy becomes a useless damsel who faints at her own shadow, basically regressing 300 years of feminism in 2 seconds. Spike, who was bored watching videos of Buffy on vampire YouTube, sees an opportunity to kill the Slayer while she's busy screaming at noises in the dark. He corners the group in a warehouse and prepares to dine on the protagonist while Xander tries to defend everyone with his rifle and Buffy almost dies of fright seeing a car. But Giles, showing he has a past dirtier than a mud wrestling pit, beats up Ethan at the shop and smashes the magic statue. The spell breaks at the exact moment Spike is about to deliver the killing blow. Buffy gets her memory back, drops her favorite catchphrase, and beats the vampire until he flees with his tail between his legs.
Hi, honey. I'm home.
In the end, Buffy discovers that dressing as a trad wife was a waste of time because Angel prefers girls who can hit back, and Willow takes advantage of the skimpy outfit to try and escape the friend zone. It's time for a conjugal visit at the playground, where Angel intercepts Drusilla before she turns children into school snacks. He tries to convince the crazy lady to leave town, but fails miserably, and gets caught by Buffy, who activates her psychotic jealousy mode. The next day, while ignoring class and passing notes with Willow, Buffy is surprised by Ford, a supposed childhood friend who appears out of nowhere like every lazy script demands. He swears he came to finish high school, but he really just wants to drag the main cast to the bronze and tell humiliating stories from the protagonist's childhood. Things heat up in the alley behind the club when Buffy vampire and tries to lie about wildcats, but Ford reveals he already knows she's the Slayer, proving her secret leaks more than her browser history. Meanwhile, we find out Ford runs a club of sad goths who think vampires are misunderstood and sexy, basically the target audience for Twilight before it was cool. Angel tries to investigate, but Willow accuses him of being a toxic, jealous boyfriend, which is true, but irrelevant. The big twist happens when Ford hands Buffy to Spike on a silver platter in exchange for immortality, revealing he has brain cancer and would rather become a blood-sucking corpse than die with dignity. He locks Buffy in a warehouse with his idiot goth followers, thinking Spike will turn everyone, but the vampires just see an all-you-can-eat buffet of dumb teenagers. Chaos ensues. Buffy uses Ford like a rag doll and climbs onto the platform to threaten to turn Drusilla into cosmic dust. Spike, being the simp that he is, tells,
"Let them go."
In the end, Ford becomes a vampire only to be staked by Buffy in the cemetery, proving the only thing penetrating him that night would be solid wood. Giles tries to give a cheap motivational speech, but Buffy realizes adult life is just a sequence of lies and disappointments, exactly like her love life. An irrelevant extra tries to talk to Giles in the library and gets strangled by a demon lady who turns into a puddle of green phlegm, setting the gross tone for this week, while Buffy fantasizes about celebrities massaging her dirty feet. Giles finds out his British delinquent past is coming back to haunt him. The extra's corpse gets up in the morgue, eyes glowing and ready to cause trouble, while Giles tries to pretend he doesn't have a gang tattoo on his arm, failing miserably at hiding that he was once young and stupid. Ethan Rayne, the evil cosplayer, returns to reveal that Giles and his friends used to summon a demon called Igon to possess each other and get high, which is definitely the stupidest drug ever invented. The booger demon jumps from body to body and decides to enter Jenny Calendar, turning the computer teacher into a sexually aggressive killing machine. She tries to seduce Giles, but when he refuses, she shows her true demon face and jumps out the window.
Was it good for you?
But Ethan, coward that he is, throws acid on his own tattoo and transfers the mark to Buffy, making the blonde the demon's new object of desire. Possessed Jenny arrives ready to rumble, but Angel shows up to save the day. Since Angel is already dead inside, just like you on a Monday morning, the demon Igon enters him and fights a spiritual battle with the inner vampire, resulting in a bar fight inside his soul. The demon loses, Jenny spits out the slime, and Giles has to deal with the shame of Buffy knowing he was a drugged-up punk who played with occult forces. They end the day pretending this wasn't the most embarrassing thing to ever happen in that library. It's career week, that magical moment where the school reminds students they'll be slaves to capitalism, leaving Buffy depressed because her only career option is dying young fighting rubber monsters, while Spike freaks out because Drusilla is acting like a spoiled brat and tries to translate a stolen book. Buffy catches a nerd vampire stealing items from a mausoleum. Angel appears in her bedroom, invading her privacy as always, and invites her ice skating, because nothing says romance like blades on your feet and hypothermia. Spike decides he's tired of getting beaten up and hires the Order of Taraka, a group of assassins who are supposedly the elite, but look like rejects from a costume contest. We have a generic big guy, a low-budget ninja, and a makeup salesman who is actually a man made of disgusting worms. Buffy goes on her date with Angel and gets attacked on the ice, turning the skating rink into a slaughterhouse before kissing the vampire with a mouthful of blood or whatever they think is romantic. The worm man assassin breaks into the neighbor's house and devours her, proving that door-to-door cosmetics sales really is hell. Buffy gets paranoid and attacks poor Oz in the school hallways, pinning him to the lockers with an aggression he secretly loved. While Willow and Oz get canapes in a VIP room for being useful nerds, the ninja assassin attacks Angel and locks him in a cage to catch some sun, the forbidden tan. In the climax, while the disgusting worm man invades Buffy's house, the ninja breaks into Angel's room where Buffy was sleeping. They fight, break everything, until the girl pulls out a stake and introduces herself as Kendra, the vampire slayer, leaving Buffy with that dumbfounded look of someone realizing she's no longer the series' only special protagonist. Our favorite blonde finds out that Destiny bureaucracy screwed up and gave the vampire slayer job to an intern named Kendra, creating an awkward who's the daddy moment. Apocalypse edition. The two run to Giles to try and understand how the universe's HR department allowed two employees for the same position, and discover that when Buffy died died for 3 seconds last season. The system activated the next in line. While measuring whose steak is bigger, they find out Kendra locked Angel in a cage to get some sun, proving she gets more work done in 5 minutes than Buffy does all year. Meanwhile, Willie, the snitch bartender, throws the emo vampire into the sewer for Spike to take home. The platinum blonde decides it's time to play doctor to cure Drusilla, which involves torturing Angel until he wishes he had a soul again. On the useless side of things, Xander and Cordelia discover the cosmetic salesman is actually a man made of worms, which describes 90% of the men Cordelia dates. They lock themselves in the basement and, amidst the smell of mold and panic, decide the best way to deal with trauma is swapping bodily fluids in a makeout session nobody asked to see. At school, an assassin disguised as a cop tries to turn Buffy into a sieve but hits Oz instead, proving her aim is as good as this episode's script. Buffy and Kendra decide to crash Spike's party, where he's about to drain Angel to resurrect his crazy girlfriend. The brawl breaks out in the church, with Giles and Willow being useful for the first time in their lives, while Xander and Cordelia stomp on worms in the hallway in a bizarre mating dance. Buffy drops the ceiling on the toxic vampire couple and rescues her destroyed boyfriend, thinking she killed the villains. But Drusilla crawls out of the rubble carrying a crispy fried Spike, proving that evil never dies. It just gets crunchier. Kendra leaves wearing Buffy's shirt, leaving unresolved sexual tension and the confirmation that killing monsters is their only hobby. Buffy comes home thinking she'll get some peace, but finds her mom sucking face with an older guy named Ted, a salesman who looks like he walked out of a 1950s margarine commercial. The guy wins everyone over with small talk about computers and food, buying Xander and Willow's cheap affection with cookies. But our paranoid protagonist realizes something is wrong when the perfect stepdad starts cheating at mini golf and threatens to slap her when no witnesses are around, showing that behind the smile is a controlling psychopath waiting to come out. Nobody believes Buffy, obviously, because her mom is desperate for affection and Ted cooks well. But when Buffy breaks into his workplace, she discovers the guy is Employee of the Month for life and has photos of Joyce on his desk, folded to hide the annoying daughter. The confrontation at home escalates quickly. Ted reads her diary, threatens to reveal she's the Slayer, and gets physical. Buffy fights back and the guy falls down the stairs like a sack of potatoes, dying on the spot. Guilt consumes the poor girl until the dead guy appears at her bedroom window fully restored, proving he has more lives than Super Mario. The gang discovers Ted's cookies were drugged to make everyone docile, and that the guy has had 4 wives who disappeared. Giles tries to be useful on patrol, but ends up taking a crossbow bolt from Jenny in a tragicomic accident that ends with both of them laughing like idiots on the way to the hospital. The game goes after Ted 2.0, finds out he's a robot made by a 50s incel inventor who wanted the perfect wife. In the final battle in the kitchen, Buffy solves the family issue with a frying pan to the cyborg's face, frying the stepdad's circuits. In the end, the Summers women decide men are overrated and prefer to rent a crappy movie, while Giles and Jenny make out in the library, proving nobody learned a thing. Sex education at Sunnydale High reaches new levels of weirdness when the teacher decides the best way to teach about pregnancy is giving students eggs to care for. Buffy, being a single mom to an egg, prefers to dump the kid at home to go kiss Angel in the cemetery, proving her maternal responsibility is 0. Meanwhile, 2 hillbilly cowboy vampires named Gorch arrive in town, because apparently Hell has a Texan accent too. What no one expected is that the eggs weren't chicken eggs, but transport pods for disgusting alien parasites that look like fingers with claws. Buffy's egg hatches during the night and the creature tries to with her face, but she kills the thing with scissors. Xander, being the nutrition genius he is, decides to boil his son to eat, but almost pukes when he sees the boiled alien fetus. At school, the eggs hatch and the creatures attach themselves to everyone's spine, turning Willow, Cordelia, and even Giles into zombie miners who just want to dig holes in the basement. Buffy discovers her mom has also become a parasite Uber and goes underground to stop the party. Down there, a giant Bezoar creature, looking like a tumor with tentacles, is controlling the whole city. Amidst a brawl where Cordelia and Xander trade punches and insults, Buffy is pulled into the mother monster's pit, but since she's the protagonist and plot armor protects her, she guts the giant creature from the inside out and emerges covered in black slime, looking like she dove into a pool of oil. The surviving hillbilly vampire looks at that disgusting scene and decides it's not even worth fighting, fleeing far away. In the end, the school makes up a story about a gas gas leak, and Buffy goes back home to get grounded because her mom, despite having been controlled by an alien, still remembers her daughter wasn't in the library studying. Our favorite Slayer wakes up in a cold sweat after a nightmare where her vegetarian vampire boyfriend turns to dust, proving she has as much luck and love as you do with diets. It's Buffy's 17th birthday, and her mom decides to celebrate by developing the motor coordination of a potato and breaking dishes in the kitchen while asking if her daughter is ready for responsibilities. Meanwhile, in the worst ventilated lair in Sunnydale, Spike is now cosplaying as an evil Professor Xavier in a wheelchair, trying to please Drusilla, who is crazier than Batman trying to understand the justice system. They decide to assemble a satanic puzzle to bring back the Judge, a blue demon who looks like a roided up Smurf, whose only power is burning the humanity out of anyone who isn't a complete degenerate. Jenny Calendar reveals she's actually a gypsy spy sent to ensure Angel keeps suffering perpetually, which is basically the description of any modern marriage. Angel decides to take the monster's arm piece to the ends of the earth. But first, we get that dramatic farewell at the docks complete with a cheap promise ring and crocodile tears. After almost dying and fleeing through the sewers like depressed Ninja Turtles, Angel and Buffy go to his apartment to dry off. The heat rises, and they finally decide to defile the fitted sheet. But what Buffy didn't know is that Angel's curse had a termination clause based on pent-up horniness. The moment he achieves true happiness, that is, at the climax of the quickie, his soul blasts off into space, and he wakes up in the rain screaming her name, ready to go back to being the biggest jerk in undead history. Now that he's become Angelus, his emo gothic psychotic version, he runs to the lair to join Spike and Drusilla in a dysfunctional family that would make the Kardashians look like amateurs. The big blue judge tries to burn Angel but realizes there's no humanity there, proving he's gone full Joker.
Not be burned. He's clean.
Clean. You mean
There's no humanity in him.
The vampire takes the opportunity to mock his ex-girlfriend, saying she was nothing but a midnight snack, leaving poor Buffy looking like she fell for an emotional pyramid scheme. While Buffy tries to deal with the fact that her caused the apocalypse, Xander has a brilliant idea pulled out of his rear end. He uses residual memories from Halloween, where he turned into a soldier, to infiltrate a military base and steal a mysterious box with Cordelia's help. The group discovers the Judge is going to attack the mall, because apparently ancient demons hate shoe sales. The monster starts frying random people thinking he's invincible because no forged weapon can kill him. That's when Buffy pulls out the gift Xander brought. The Judge, confused, asks what that thing does, and the answer comes in the form of an anti-tank missile to the face. Turns out no forged weapon could kill him in the Middle Ages, but the modern arms industry solved that problem real quick. Angel tries to attack Buffy, but she realizes her ex-boyfriend has become toxic waste and resolves the situation with the most effective method of all time. A kick to the junk so hard it must have hurt even the descendants he can't have. The sexual tension in Sunnydale is so high you could cut it with a butter knife, and Willow is frustrated because Oz won't make a move even with a broken traffic light. Meanwhile, Xander and Cordelia continue making out in a car parked in the bushes until they're interrupted by a werewolf who decides to make a convertible sunroof out of the metal. The city panics with the new giant dog on the loose, and a chauvinist hunter named Kane shows up wanting to turn the beast into a rug, acting like testosterone is a superpower. The gang tries to find out who the hairy beast is. Xander, in a moment of negative genius, decides to confront Larry, the school bully, thinking he's the werewolf. He uses a series of metaphors about hiding his true self and body changes, and Larry misunderstands everything, coming out of the closet and thanking Xander for being such an understanding gay ally. Xander is left looking like he farted in an elevator, but now he has a new best friend. Actually, the werewolf is Oz, who was bitten by his cousin, proving family reunions are always a danger. Willow goes to his house to try and get the romance moving, and he turns into the beast right in front of her, forcing a marathon through the woods. In the end, Buffy bends the idiot hunter's rifle with her bare hands, telling him to get out of town.
How about you let the door hit you in the ass on the way out of town?
Willow hits Oz with a tranquilizer dart, and the next day decides that dating a furry who turns into a killer monster 3 nights a month is still better than being single and listening to Xander's complaints. It's Valentine's Day Eve, and Xander, the king of romantic bad luck, gives Cordelia a heart necklace, thinking he's gonna score, but the only thing he gets is dumped because she's ashamed to date a social loser in front of her snake friends. Desperate and with an ego more fragile than a crystal glass, he decides the logical solution isn't therapy, but blackmailing the local local witch, Amy, to cast a love spell. The genius idea is to make Cordelia fall in love so he can dump her, proving his emotional maturity is non-existent. The spell obviously goes totally wrong, because witchcraft in the hands of a virgin teenager is a recipe for disaster. Suddenly, every woman in Sunnydale, except Cordelia, turns into a nymphomaniac thirsty for Xander's flabby body. Buffy's mom hits on him, Willow tries to lick his ear in a scene that will give you nightmares, and Buffy shows up dressed as a dominatrix, ready to turn vampire hunting into something much more R-rated. While Xander flees from a horde of love-struck zombies who want to tear pieces off him out of love, Amy, who is also in heat for the boy, decides to turn the competition into rodents, and Buffy turns into a real rat. Giles tries to fix the mess while Drusilla saves Xander from Angel just to try and make him her new immortal pet. In the end, the chaos only stops when they reverse the magic. Buffy turns back into a human and probably naked in front of Oz, and Cordelia, seeing that even her mom wanted Xander, decides he'll do and gets back together with him. The episode ends with everyone pretending they didn't attempt collective crimes of passion. Angel decides to take the concept of toxic ex-boyfriend to a professional level, breaking into Buffy's room to watch her sleep and leaving artistic drawings on her bed like a psychopath with too much free time. While the soulless vampire narrates pretentious poems about passion, Jenny Calendar tries to fix her screw-up and translate the ritual to return Angel's soul using cutting-edge 90s technology and a floppy disk that probably has less memory than a goldfish. Giles gets all hopeful thinking he's going on a romantic date, but Angel discovers the plan, invades the school, destroys the magic orb, and decides to give Jenny a game over, snapping her neck with the same ease you break your diet on a Monday. The vampire even sets up a romantic scene in Giles's apartment, with champagne and roses, turning the discovery of the corpse into the cruelest, most sadistic prank in the show's history. Blinded by rage and stupidity, Giles goes alone to try and kill Angel, armed with a Molotov cocktail and a baseball bat, proving grief affects tactical judgment. He almost becomes Librarian Barbecue until Buffy shows up to save the day, beating the hell out of her ex-boyfriend and kicking his balls metaphorically. In the end, Angel runs away laughing, Giles cries at the grave, and the floppy disk with the cure for the vampire falls into a black hole behind the desk, guaranteeing the suffering extends for a few more episodes. The Slayer is taken down by humanity's deadliest enemy, a bad flu. Buffy ends up in the hospital delirious with fever, which is terrible because she has trauma regarding doctors since she saw her cousin die. While she's high on meds, she starts seeing a demon that looks like Freddy Krueger after a chemical accident, wandering the halls and sucking the life out of sick kids, because apparently Sunnydale Hospital has no health inspection or exorcist on call. The friends try to investigate, but the local doctor is more worried about injecting diseases into children to cure them, with medical logic that would make any scientist cry blood, since no one believes the feverish girl who kills monsters for a living. Buffy decides the only way to see the beast again is to get sick on purpose. She drinks a pure virus diluted in water, an attitude that would make the Surgeon General weep, and hits 107 degrees fever, frying her brain enough to see the astral plane. In the hospital basement, the demon named Kindestad is about to child's eyes out, but Buffy arrives stumbling, looking like she came out of a 3-day rave, and snaps the beast's neck with her bare hands. The episode proves that a flu-ridden, hallucinating Buffy is more competent than the entire American healthcare system combined. She goes back home, gets pampered by Xander and Willow, and continues being the only person who solves the supernatural crap in this cursed town. While Buffy is busy rejecting a generic NPC who wants to take her to a stupid dance, the school starts turning into a supernatural asylum, where students try to kill themselves and guns vanish into thin air. Principal Snyder, that fascist garden troll with a Napoleon complex, obviously blames the protagonist for everything, while a 1955 yearbook decides to fall off the shelf because ghosts love vintage literature. Things start getting really weird when snakes sprout from the cafeteria food, guaranteeing nobody needs to diet that day. While the Scooby Gang tries to figure out if the ghost is Giles's dead ex-girlfriend, Buffy starts having visions of a 50s romantic drama involving a teacher and a student that ended in double homicide. The situation escalates when wasps, because snakes weren't biblical enough, stop the group from entering the school, but Buffy, with her protagonist immunity, enters and gets possessed by the model student's spirit, while Angel, who went there just to cause trouble, gets possessed by the dead female teacher. What follows is a low-budget theatrical performance where Buffy shoots her vampire ex-boyfriend in the chest. Angel falls off the balcony in an Oscar-worthy performance. But since he's already dead inside and out, he simply gets up, walks up the stairs, and kisses the possessed Slayer. The power of toxic love expels the ghosts, and Angel runs off to take a shower and scrub the stench of human feelings off his body. Meanwhile, at the Mansion of Evil, Spike decides he's tired of playing Hot Wheels and reveals his legs have been working for a while, proving he's the season's biggest troll.
Sooner than you think.
The Sunnydale swim team is celebrating victories, which means they are arrogant jerks who enjoy bullying. But karma arrives fast when one of these idiots is found on the beach looking like a peeled fish fillet. Buffy tries to investigate but ends up having to deal with harassment from swimmers who think no is just a suggestion, while Principal Snyder tries to force Willow to give a good grade to a student with the intelligence of an amoeba. Xander, in his eternal quest for male validation, decides to join the swim team. Obviously, he discovers the secret to success isn't training, but a sauna full of steroid vapor that turns teenagers into creatures looking like rejected extras from The Shape of Water. Buffy confronts Coach Marine, who reveals himself to be a psychopath of the worst kind. He's not only turning students into sea monsters, but also throws the school nurse into a pit to become fish food. When he points a gun at Buffy, he drops the most disturbing line of the series, saying his fish boys have other needs, implying things we won't discuss in prime time. He throws the Slayer into the pit to serve as a blow-up doll for the monsters, but Xander shows up to save the day. In the end, the coach becomes dinner for his own mutant athletes. Xander goes back to being a failure on dry land, and the monsters swim into the ocean to star in some bizarre Discovery Channel documentary. We start with an irrelevant history lesson about Angel's past, showing how he was a useless drunk in 1753 before becoming a useless vampire. Back in the present, Giles finds a giant rock with a petrified demon named Acathla, who is supposedly going to swallow the world if someone pulls the sword from his chest. Basically, a King Arthur from hell. Meanwhile, Buffy finds a floppy disk, an archaeological artifact from the Jurassic era, containing the spell to return Angel's soul. But of course, the emo vampire is already busy kidnapping Giles and trying to pull the sword from the stone demon. However, he fails miserably at pulling it out, proving performance issues happen even to the undead. Buffy tries to solve things with violence but gets distracted by extra vampires. The real tragedy happens in the library, where the Slayer Kendra, who traveled the whole world to help, gets hypnotized by Drusilla and has her throat with the ease of someone opening a butter package. She lasts less screen time than a tutorial NPC. When Buffy arrives, she only finds her colleague's body and the police, who decide to show up at the worst possible moment to arrest the only person who can save the world, because the incompetence of Sunnydale authorities is the true villain of the series. The episode ends with Buffy caressing her dead colleague's face while being surrendered, guaranteeing nobody is going to sleep happy tonight. The Slayer is officially screwed, being dragged away by incompetent cops while Principal Snyder, that garden troll with a Napoleon complex, accuses her of everything except global warming. After executing a judo move on authority and becoming a fugitive, Buffy decides to visit her useless friends at the hospital, where Willow is in a coma and Xander continues being Xander. Meanwhile, Angelus prepares his apocalyptic ritual by torturing poor Giles, who is probably used to getting beaten up every Tuesday by now. Buffy bumps into a demon who tries to lecture her, but soon Spike arrives, the bleached vampire who decides to betray his own grandfather because he prefers to keep watching soap operas rather than see the world end. They make a bizarre deal in Buffy's living room, and of course, her mom chooses that exact moment to show up. Joyce discovers her daughter kills monsters, and after a random vampire turns to dust on the carpet, the mood gets more crooked than Spike's morals. At the mansion, Angelus opens the stone mouth of the demon Acathla to suck the world into hell, while Spike brawls with Buffy's ex-boyfriend and flees with Drusilla in a moment of pure strategic homewrecking. Buffy and Angelus begin the dance of death with swords. Willow, waking from the coma and speaking fluent Romanian as if she downloaded Duolingo Premium, casts the healing spell. Angel's soul returns the exact second Buffy is ready to finish the job. He looks confused with that lost puppy look, but the portal is already open. Buffy realizes the universe loves a bad joke, kisses her boyfriend, and shoves the sword into his chest, sending the love of her life into a dimension of eternal torment. Traumatized and homeless, she catches the first bus out of that cursed town. While Buffy lives the American dream of working as a depressed waitress in Los Angeles under the alias Anne, her friends in Sunnydale try to be slayers and fail miserably, possessing the motor coordination of a stunned potato. The city misses the blonde, but she's too busy serving cold coffee and ignoring her own existence. She meets a teenage street couple who look like extras from a grunge music video, but soon enough, the boy shows up dead and aged as if he'd marathoned Radiohead's entire discography in an hour. When the girl, Lily, gets tricked by some guy named Ken, who promises shelter but delivers a cult, Buffy decides to stop whining and go after her. The so-called shelter is actually a portal to a dimension of industrial slavery where time moves fast and hope dies. Basically an Amazon warehouse in the underworld. Ken reveals his true cheap demon face and tells her she's no one. That's when the Slayer instinct kicks in. Buffy decides she's tired of being Anne, reclaims her identity, and turns the demons into pate, using techniques of violence that would make Gandhi proud if Gandhi were a blonde psychopath. She frees the slaves, kicks Ken's ass back to the dimension he came from, and clubs the portal shut. Back in reality, she leaves the crappy job to her friend and returns home, where her mother greets her with that hug of someone who won't ask difficult questions for at least 5 minutes. Buffy returns home, but the mood is heavier than an indie drama script. Her mother, in a brilliant interior design decision, hangs a creepy Nigerian mask on the wall because nothing says welcome home like a cursed artifact. Principal Snyder continues to be a tiny fascist and bans Buffy from returning to school, while her friends act like passive-aggressive idiots, blaming her for running away, ignoring the fact that she had to kill her boyfriend to save their world. To make matters worse, the mask on the wall makes eyes glow and starts reanimating the dead, including the family cat who crawls out of the grave looking like a smelly old rug. Giles tries to warn them, but nobody answers the phone because they're too busy at an awkward party at Buffy's house, where everyone treats her with the warmth of an industrial freezer. Zombies crash the party, killing extras nobody cares about, and an annoying friend of Joyce's puts on the mask, turning into a demon with hypnotic laser eyes. Amidst the chaos, Buffy finally stops trying to please these ungrateful people and shoves a shovel in the demon's face, ending the fun. The group makes up with the speed of people who almost became zombie snacks. The next day, Giles decides to stop being the passive librarian and corners Principal Snyder against a locker, using physical threats and bureaucratic violence to ensure Buffy gets back into school, proving that even the most polite Brit has a limit for tolerating bureaucratic dwarves. Our favorite problematic blonde is back in town under the scholastic dictatorship of Principal Snyder, who only takes her back because the school board actually has a brain. While Buffy's mom acts like a 6-year-old celebrating, 2 vampires named Mr. Trick and Kakistos arrive in town to diversify the local demographics and open a drive-thru with live humans. Buffy's self-esteem goes into the trash when Faith shows up, a new Slayer who is basically a version of her with more attitude and less emotional trauma. Faith arrives rocking the bronze, telling gross stories of slaughter that get Xander excited, and flirts with everyone while beating up vampires as if it were therapy. Giles, who clearly prefers the rookie, discovers that Kakistos is a vampire so old his hands have turned into cloven hooves, proving that manicures don't exist in hell. While Buffy tries to have a social life and fails miserably by running away from romantic dates, it turns out Kakistos killed Faith's watcher and now wants her neck. Buffy tries to teach the rule of not dying, but Faith prefers the method of panicking. In the end, they are cornered in a warehouse, and since a normal stake doesn't work on the old goat, Faith grabs a thick, hard, huge piece of wood and violently penetrates Kakistos' chest until he turns to dust. In the end, Buffy goes to visit the haunted mansion to feel miserable, leaves a ring on the floor, and out of nowhere, Angel falls from the ceiling completely naked, shivering, and fresh from hell, proving that no one in this show can stay dead in peace. Willow tries to read classic literature to her werewolf boyfriend locked in a cage, but security fails because Xander is a useless guy sleeping on the job. Obviously, the window was open and Oz vanishes, leaving everyone in a panic thinking he turned into a human buffet. Meanwhile, Buffy tries to overcome her traumas with a school psychologist, but the only thing she manages is to find out he was brutally murdered, which does wonders for her mental health. It turns out the killer isn't the werewolf or Angel, who is back acting like a rabid stray dog growling at the walls. The culprit is Pete, an insecure idiot who drank some questionable juice to become more manly and ended up turning into a monster with bulging veins who beats his girlfriend friend Debbie. When Pete decides to kill his girlfriend because she has an annoying voice, the whole gang shows up to get beaten. Oz turns into a werewolf. Buffy shoots tranquilizer darts at everyone except the monster and hits Giles, proving her impeccable aim. Pete kills Debbie and is about to crush Buffy, but Angel emerges from the shadows and, even in chains, snaps Pete's neck like a toothpick. The episode ends with Angel crying in Buffy's lap because vampires with souls are the most emo thing in existence. The Cold War between Buffy and Cordelia escalates to nuclear levels when the two decide to compete for the Homecoming Queen crown, because apparently killing demons isn't enough validation. Mr. Trick organizes an event called Slayer Fest 98, inviting gourmet assassins, rednecks, and stereotypical Germans to hunt the Slayers for sport. Thanks to some cheap emotional manipulation by Buffy and Cordelia end up stuck in the same limo, but instead of going to the dance, they are taken to the Forest of Death. The assassins mistake Cordelia for Faith, which is the biggest compliment she's ever received in her life, and the two have to survive in the woods. Meanwhile, at school, Xander and Willow swap bodily fluids in the locker room while cheating on their respective partners, proving teenage hormones are more dangerous than vampires. In the forest, Cordelia proves her usefulness by killing a vampire with a spatula in a scene worthy of a violent cooking show, and scares off the other vampire just by being an insufferable diva. Buffy uses the trackers to make the Germans kill themselves. They return to the dance covered in dirt and blood expecting glory, only to find out the vote ended in a tie between two extras nobody cares about. The two leave rolling their eyes while the mayor recruits Mr. Trick to ensure evil remains corporate and efficient, while Buffy attempts to balance the slaughter of the undead with the true horror of studying for the SATs in a cemetery. The school decides to fund uniforms by selling highly suspicious chocolate bars. Snyder, the rat-faced principal, distributes the candy, unaware he is turning the entire population into hormonal, irresponsible teenagers. Buffy sells half the stock to her mother and the other half to Giles, inadvertently creating the most traumatic combination possible. The adults in town start acting like you at a club, drinking, breaking things, and making idiotic decisions. Giles, now going by the delinquent alias Ripper, decides the best form of surveillance is to get wasted with Joyce and relive his juvenile delinquent days, while Buffy tries to drive her mother's car and causes accidents because no one taught this girl how to use the brake. She discovers Giles and Joyce aren't just eating chocolate, but also making out on top of a stolen cop car. The visual trauma is so intense, Buffy almost forgets there's a demon named Lurconus in the sewers, looking for an all buffet of newborn babies. They invade the candy factory, torture a guy named Ethan Rain with the delicacy of a runaway truck, and run to the sewers. There, Buffy incinerates the giant snake with a gas pipe and a lighter, proving violence solves everything. The next day, a moral hangover hits the whole town, and Buffy feigns dementia while Giles and Joyce try not to look at each other, praying to forget the fluid exchange of the previous night. Repressed tension and guilt dominate the group when Xander and Willow start playing footsie under the table, cheating on their partners with the subtlety of an elephant in a crystal shop. Buffy reveals she is patrolling with Faith, the new Slayer who solves problems with brute force. But the fun ends when Gwendolyn Post shows up, a bitter British lady who came to audit the general incompetence and insult Giles for becoming too American. While Gwendolyn acts like the mother-in-law nobody asked for, Buffy visits Angel at the mansion to practice Tai Chi, which is basically their code for almost kissing and creating unnecessary drama. Meanwhile, Xander and Willow let hormones win and kiss in the library, proving nerds can be cheaters too. Xander, with a bruised ego and jealousy of Angel, follows the vampire and sees him kissing Buffy. He runs to gossip, resulting in an intervention where everyone attacks Buffy for dating the undead, except Giles, who finally grows a spine and tells everyone to shut up. But peace is short-lived because Gwendolyn reveals herself as the obvious villain, knocks Giles out with a statue, and tries to steal the glove of Minagun. Faith, manipulated by the old woman and full of rage, goes to kill Angel, thinking he is the culprit. Chaos ensues at the mansion with everyone fighting everyone. Gwendolyn puts on a glove and starts shooting lightning like a low-budget Sith Lord, but Buffy solves the problem by throwing a giant shard of glass that slices the old woman's arm off, incinerating the witch in the process. In the end, nobody trusts anyone. Faith isolates herself in a motel, and the group continues to be a walking emotional disaster. Buffy shocks society by getting a high score on the SATs, proving that killing demons hasn't completely destroyed her neurons, making Giles proud and her mother desperate to send her to a college far away. But the real star is Spike, who returns to town drunk, crying and destroying dolls because Drusilla dumped him for a chaos demon, and now he is just a pathetic cuckolded vampire wandering the streets. The blonde vampire decides to drown his sorrows by kidnapping Willow and Xander to force the redhead into performing a love spell, while Spike vents his love problems to Buffy's mom in the kitchen. In a bizarre domestic scene, Angel and Buffy have to team up with the drunkard to save their idiot friends. Spike, at the height of his drunken wisdom, throws it in Buffy and Angel's faces that they will never be just friends because lust and hate go hand in hand. In captivity, Xander and Willow think they're going to die and decide to kiss, because apparently their libido is activated by mortal danger. The plan is perfect until Oz and Cordelia arrive for the rescue and see the betrayal live. Cordelia runs, falls through a hole, and gets impaled by a rebar, which kills the romantic mood instantly. Meanwhile, Buffy, Angel, and Spike fight vampires in a magic shop. The brawl makes Spike realize that women like toxic, violent men, so he decides to go back to being the monster Drusilla loved, promising to torture her until she likes him again.
I'm gonna do what I should have done in the first place. I'll find her wherever she is, tie her up, torture her, till she likes me again.
He leaves town singing on the highway, leaving behind a trail of destroyed relationships, a hospitalized Cordelia, and a group of friends who now deeply hate each other. Useless Cordelia is crying her eyes out and burning photos because loser Xander kissed Willow, proving his taste in women is as questionable as this group's survival skills. Trying to act like she's over it, she falls for the talk of Anya, a new student who looks like she tortures animals, who is actually a vengeance demon dying to cause chaos. Cordelia wishes Buffy had never set foot in Sunnydale, and boom, reality changes in the blink of an eye. Welcome to the teenage apocalypse, where vampires rule the town at night and humans are just lunchboxes with legs. In this wonderful world, Xander and Willow are goth vampires dressed in sadomasochistic leather. They clearly bought an clearance sale, and now their favorite pastime is draining blood and licking each other's necks. And instead of listening to Cordelia's endless complaints, they just attack her. Huge loss. Giles leads a pathetic resistance with Oz and other disposable extras, trying to protect humans while the Master, that old vampire with a face like roadkill bat, built a factory to process people en masse. Because nothing screams efficiency like draining blood on an industrial conveyor belt. Giles discovers this world is wrong and summons Anya to undo the mess, but he needs to destroy her necklace. Buffy finally shows up, but this version of her is a soulless killing machine with a serious attitude problem. She invades the Master's factory for a massive brawl. Angel, who was locked in a cage being tortured and serving as a toy for Willow, tries to help and turns to dust. Buffy kills Xander. Oz kills Willow by throwing her onto a stake, and the Master snaps Buffy's neck like a dry twig. While this beautiful slaughter happens, Giles rips off Anya's necklace and smashes it. Time resets. Nobody remembers anything, and Anya is left standing there looking like a fool trying to grant wishes that fail, while the group continues being the same idiots as always. It's Christmas in Sunnydale, and Angel is suffering from chronic insomnia and nightmares, because apparently having a soul implies being a depressive emo 24/7. He starts seeing the ghosts of everyone he has ever killed, including Jenny Calendar, who shows up just to make his life hell by saying he needs to kill Buffy.
And then you'll be ready to kill her.
It's the first evil cosplaying as dead people to mess with our favorite vampire's fragile mind. While Buffy tries to force some Christmas spirit by inviting problematic Faith to dinner, she and Angel share a bizarre dream where they are about to finally consummate the act in bed, but Angel decides biting her neck is more exciting than They wake up in a cold sweat, and Giles discovers this ancient evil cannot be touched, which unfortunately makes punching it in the face impossible. Angel, being the drama queen he is, decides the only way to stop suffering and protect Buffy is to kill himself. He goes to the top of a hill and waits for the sun to rise to become vampire barbecue. Buffy runs after him for one of those intense relationship dramas where they hit each other and scream vows of love, with Angel begging to die and Buffy refusing to let him. But since the script demands a cheap Christmas miracle, it starts snowing in California, blocking out the sun and saving the suicidal vampire from turning to dust. They walk down the hill holding hands while the rest of the cast looks out the window, pretending snow in Southern California is normal and not concerning climate change. Buffy's mom, Joyce, decides to try connecting with her daughter during patrol and ends up stumbling over the corpses of 2 children, which triggers her ultimate Karen mode. She founds a group of bored mothers called Moo and starts a crusade against everything occult, invading the school, searching lockers, and confiscating Giles' books as if they were forbidden magazines. The dead kids, who are actually a giant demon in disguise imitating Hansel and Gretel, manipulate the entire town into starting a witch hunt. Willow, Amy the Witch, and Buffy are captured by the Slayer's own mother, who has completely lost her mind and decided that burning her daughter in the middle of City Hall is a great parenting idea. They are tied to stakes on top of piles of books to be roasted alive. Amy, showing she has zero loyalty, transforms into a rat and flees into the corners, leaving her friends to turn into charcoal. Giles and Cordelia arrive to the rescue, with Cordelia putting out the fire with a hose and Giles casting a spell that reveals the giant demon's true form. Buffy, even tied to the stake, manages to break free enough to snap the pole and the monster blindly, killing the creature in an absurd stroke of luck. In the end, the parents forget they tried to murder their children due to the magic, and poor Amy stays trapped in rat form, condemned to run on a plastic hamster wheel for the foreseeable future, because Willow doesn't know how to undo the spell. Buffy and her pet emo vampire are in that awkward moment of exchanging sweat without when Angel decides to ask what she's doing for her birthday. The blonde says she's going out with an older man who likes to be called Daddy. And while Angel almost has a heart attack from jealousy thinking he's being cheated on, Buffy reveals she's seeing an ice show with her biological father, which calms the undead guy's heart. But life isn't a bed of roses, and while Giles is obsessed with making Buffy stare at crystals, he starts injecting her with a special juice that drains all the girl's strength. In the middle of the street, she discovers she is weaker than you, trying to open a pickle jar and almost dies to a generic vampire. Meanwhile, the Council of Watchers decides the best way to evaluate a Slayer is to lock her in a house with a psychopath named Kralik without any powers, because apparently logic isn't a strong suit for these Brits. To make the day worse, Buffy's dad cancels the date, proving daddy issues are eternal, and Kralik escapes, kills his guards, and finds out where Buffy's mom lives. Joyce, thinking the monster on the porch is her daughter, gets kidnapped, forcing Buffy to invade the place armed only with cunning and the strength of an anemic cheerleader. Kralik begs for his pills, but the blonde swaps the medicine for holy water, turning the maniac into cosmic dust.
Full Slayer power, I'd be punning right about now.
In the end, the head of the Watchers shows up to congratulate Buffy for surviving and fire Giles for having the audacity to care about her life like a real father. Buffy tells the Brit to shove it and forgives Giles. The episode ends with the Slayer celebrating with a peanut butter sandwich, which neither she nor useless Xander can open, needing Willow's help not to starve to death. While the main crew is busy saving the world from demons and apocalyptic warrior women, Xander realizes his only function in the group is to serve as a punching bag and target for Cordelia's jokes. Determined to stop being a useless NPC, he gets a convertible car to act like a stun, but ends up becoming an Uber driver for a bunch of delinquent zombies who think vandalism is the peak of post-death fun. Buffy and Giles completely ignore his existence to focus on the end of the world, so Xander decides to live his own GTA-style side adventure. Amidst the chaos, he runs over a demon and finds Faith. The Rebel Slayer, seeing the boy has a car and hormones to spare, decides to use him to relieve stress. Xander loses his thinking he's a stallion, but gets kicked out of the room right after like recyclable trash, discovering the zombies left a bomb in his car. The undead plan to blow up the school, because apparently high school is hell, even for those who are already dead, while the rest of the group fights a tentacled monster straight out of a bizarre in the library. Xander goes down to the basement and faces the zombie leader, Jack. With the coldness of someone who has been humiliated all his life, Xander bluffs in the face of danger, convincing the undead guy to disarm the bomb so he doesn't get disintegrated. The main group survives, full of bruises and stories of glory, while Xander ends the day smiling alone, knowing he saved everyone's skin without anyone, not even annoying Cordelia, having a clue about the size of the masculinity he hid in the basement. The arrival of a new watcher named Wesley proves things can always get worse. The guy is an insufferable stuffed shirt who thinks hunting vampires is an afternoon tea, which makes Faith roll her eyes and decide rules are for the weak. Buffy, tired of being the good girl, decides to follow her friend's chaotic vibe, and the two start terrorizing the town, stealing weapons and causing traffic accidents like they're in a bad rock music video. Meanwhile, the mayor reveals he is invincible and starts his evil plans, and an obese demon named Balthazar sits soaking in a tub demanding his amulet back, looking like an angry Discord mod because his account got banned. Wesley orders Buffy to recover said amulet, but Faith convinces the blonde to ignore orders and live the gangsta life. They break into a weapon shop, make out with some vampires, and feel like they own the world. However, the fun stops when Faith, high on adrenaline and stupidity, mistakes Deputy Mayor Finch for a vampire and drives stake through the human's chest. The guy dies instantly, and while Buffy goes into shock realizing they just committed manslaughter, Faith simply shrugs and acts like she just broke a nail. Balthazar gets electrocuted in the tub. The mayor celebrates his immortality, and Buffy ends the episode horrified realizing her new best friend is actually a functional psychopath who doesn't care about human life. Our favorite blonde slayer wakes up sweating cold after dreaming she's drowning with a corpse, proving she urgently needs therapy or a boyfriend who isn't deceased. Meanwhile, a prissy Brit named Wesley arrives at the library to take charge, acting with the authority of an elementary school hall monitor. He orders Buffy and the unstable Faith to investigate Deputy Mayor Finch's murder, but Faith couldn't care less about laws or guilt, operating on the logic that being the chosen one implies a free pass for manslaughter. While Mayor Wilkins shreds evidence like it's salad, he discovers Buffy and Faith are snooping around his office. The girls narrowly escape, but Buffy realizes Faith's moral compass is broken and pointing directly to hell. Trying to fix the situation, Xander decides to use his superpower of making the worst possible decisions and goes to talk to Faith at the motel. Against all biological and logical odds, he actually manages to get the psychopath into bed, nearly losing his own life when she decides that asphyxiation is the perfect foreplay for a murder. Angel shows up to save idiot Xander's neck and takes Faith in chains to the mansion, but useless Wesley decides to call the council to kidnap the girl. Obviously, Faith escapes, beats up the Brit, and flees to the docks, ready to leave the country.
Wrong again, Wes.
Buffy intercepts her for that classic philosophical debate via fistfight, but they are interrupted by the mayor's vampires. In a plot twist worthy of a Mexican soap opera, Faith saves Buffy and kills the vampire trick, but instead of returning to the good guys team, she goes straight to the mayor's office to ask for a job, proving daddy issues are the most powerful driving force in this universe. Anya, now demoted to pathetic human status, tries to convince a demon to return her powers but gets rejected faster than you on Tinder. Meanwhile, at school, Willow is so frustrated with Buffy's lack of attention that she makes a pencil fly through the sheer force of hatred, nearly impaling a tree. Trying to be rebellious and soft goth, she agrees to help Anya with a recovery spell that goes terribly wrong, bringing a vampire version of Willow, who is extremely leather-fed from another dimension to Sunnydale. Vampire Willow arrives thinking this world is a bore because no one is being tortured in the streets. She goes to the bronze, throws a dumb basketball player across the room, and finds Xander, disappointed to see he's alive and not a chew toy. When the Scooby Gang sees the evil lookalike, they assume the original Willow kicked the bucket and start mourning, until the real Willow shows up, creating mental confusion that merely fries Xander's limited brain. Realizing the golden opportunity, they decide to dress nice Willow in the vampire's dominatrix clothes to fool the minions. Willow tries to act like her evil version, but has the intimidation factor of a hamster. Things get weird and full of narcissistic tension when the two Willows meet, and the original has to fight the urge to touch herself literally. In the end, Willow's dumb compassion speaks louder, and she convinces the group to send the vampire back to her dimension. The lookalike is teleported straight onto a stake, turning to dust before she can even utter a curse word, proving dimensional karma is instant. Original Willow ends the night earning respect from the school bully, who is now terrified of becoming the ginger nerd's snack. Buffy and Angel try to have a normal date at the movies, but the tension is interrupted when Faith shows up to hunt a demon with a teenager's name, Skylar. Mayor Wilkins, who now acts like Faith's overprotective and evil father, sends her to get some books on Ascension. Faith kills the demon, steals the books, and then tries to seduce Angel, rubbing blood on him like it's expensive perfume. When the vampire rejects the psychopath's advances, she decides that if she can't have his body, she'll take his soul. The mayor hires a discount shaman to perform a ritual, and suddenly, Angel returns to being Angelus. Or at least that's what it looks like when he starts kissing Faith and punching Xander, fulfilling the dream of 90% of the audience. The new dynamic duo of evil captures Buffy and chains her in the mansion for a session of psychological torture and villain monologues. Faith takes the opportunity to reveal all the mayor's plans, feeling like Actress of the Year and bragging about how she fooled everyone. That's when Angel drops the bomb that he is, in fact, the second best actor in the world. It was all an elaborate setup. The shaman owed Giles favors, and Faith fell for the most dangerous prank in history. Buffy breaks free from the chains, ready for round 2, and Faith realizes she was played like a fool on a national level. After a knife fight involving more romantic tension than hatred, Faith kisses Buffy's forehead in a totally confusing gesture and flees.
Kill me, you become me. You're not ready for that. Yet.
The episode ends with Buffy forgiving Angel for being too convincing of a jerk, because apparently, psychological torture is forgivable if it's for the greater good. While patrolling a city that has more demons than inhabitants, Buffy kills a mouthless critter, but ends up absorbing its nasty blood through her hand, because wearing gloves was never a fashion option for the Slayer. The next day, the itch on her hand turns into a mind-reading superpower, transforming her life into an auditory hell worse than a family group chat. She discovers that Xander thinks about every 3 seconds, that Wesley has fantasies about Cordelia, and in the most traumatic moment of her existence, hears her own mother's mind revealing she had sex with Giles on the hood of a police car, twice. The protagonist's brain almost melts with this information that absolutely no one needed to know. Amid the mental cacophony of the cafeteria, she picks up on someone promising to kill everyone the next day, and faints. The group of idiots deduces the culprit is Jonathan, that short, ignored extra who is up in a tower with a rifle. Buffy rushes to stop the massacre, only to discover the emo kid just wanted to kill himself because no one notices his existence, proving that the lack of therapy in Sunnydale is the real villain. Meanwhile, Xander uses his single functional brain cell to catch the lunch lady seasoning the food with rat poison. She lunges at him with a cleaver in a psychotic fit, screaming about vermin. Buffy arrives in time to save the day through physical violence, knocks out the lady of the homicidal lunchboxes, and loses her telepathic powers. In the end, Giles tries to feign normality, but Buffy reminds him he used a police hood as a motel, and he walks into a tree out of shame. The mayor continues spoiling the psychopathic Faith with sharp gifts, while Joyce finds out Buffy was accepted into real colleges, but the girl insists on staying in a town where life expectancy is 20 years. Tired of waiting for the Ascension while sitting around scratching themselves, the group decides to steal the box of Gavrock from the villain. The plan is executed with the habitual competence of a kindergarten class. Buffy gets stuck on a jamming pulley, Angel has to save her hide, and Willow is captured by Faith. Wesley, trying to be the tough leader nobody respects, suggests leaving Willow to die for the sake of the mission, but Oz breaks the ritual pot and decides the redhead is worth more than humanity. A hostage exchange is set for the cafeteria, where the mayor takes the opportunity to inflict psychological torture on Angel, saying he can never give Buffy a real future and will end up changing her diapers when she gets old and senile. When the exchange happens, Principal Snyder appears out of nowhere barking orders like the rabid chihuahua he is, and one of the henchmen opens the box, unleashing giant, disgusting spiders. Buffy closes the box, crushing spider legs. Faith throws a knife that almost gives Wesley a vasectomy, and the mayor leaves laughing with the bugs. Later, Willow reveals she rejected Oxford and Yale to stay on the Hellmouth fighting evil, proving that academic intelligence doesn't stop anyone from making terrible life decisions. After a bizarre wedding dream, where Buffy catches fire at the altar, Angel wakes up with the epiphany that he needs to end the relationship. Meanwhile, Anya invites Xander to the prom because he's the only option available in the desperate market. Buffy and Angel argue in the sewer, the most romantic spot in town, and he dumps her with the classic "it's for your own good" excuse, saying he's leaving town, leaving the blonde crying lying in Willow's lap. Xander finds out Cordelia is broke and working in a clothing store to pay for her dress, but instead of humiliating his shallow ex-girlfriend as usual, he anonymously pays for it. But peace is short-lived because an incel named Tucker has trained hellhounds to attack anyone wearing formal wear just because he got rejected by a girl. Buffy decides to channel her post-breakup sadness into ultra-violence, sends her friends to the party, and goes to hunt the monsters alone. She invades the vengeful nerd's basement, ties him up, and exterminates the demonic dogs before they chew through the rented tuxedos. Back at the prom, Jonathan gets on stage and presents Buffy with the Class Protector Award in the form of a ridiculous glittery umbrella, acknowledging that without her, the class mortality rate would be 100%. Buffy is moved by the validation from the extras she saved all year. And because there's no such thing as too much torture, Angel shows up in a suit for one last slow dance, ensuring her heart remains in tatters before the final graduation apocalypse. Graduation at Sunnydale High approaches, and Mayor Richard Wilkins decides motivational speeches are for losers, so he plans to transform into a pure demon and devour the entire population, starting with the students who failed math. Meanwhile, Anya reveals to the gang that an ascension transforms humans into demons bigger than American student debt, causing widespread panic. Willow and Oz, realizing the end of the world is the perfect excuse, finally decide to play doctor in bed, ensuring they die with a smile on their faces. But the joy is short-lived because Faith, the rebellious slayer with severe daddy issues, shoots a poisoned arrow into Angel's back, proving Cupid was on hard drugs that day. The only cure for the emo vampire is to drain a slayer's blood to the last drop. Buffy, always the rational girlfriend, refuses the idea of turning her boyfriend into a human straw, but decides Faith has blood to spare. She goes to her rival's apartment, and the two turn the place into a no-holds-barred wrestling ring, smashing furniture, windows, and each other's faces. The brawl moves to the roof, where Buffy stabs Faith with her own knife in the gut, ready to fill the canteen for Angel. But Faith, in an act of supreme trolling, throws herself onto a moving truck and flees bleeding, leaving Buffy hanging, holding a useless knife while her undead boyfriend prepares to die again. Buffy realizes her blood delivery plan failed miserably, so she rushes to the hospital where Angel is delirious, more than a Twilight fan, out of options, and with tension bursting through the roof. She offers her own neck to the vampire in a scene that carries more connotation of a than a medical transfusion. He sucks with gusto, but incredibly manages to stop before draining his girlfriend dry, proving he has more self-control than you at an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. While Buffy takes an anemia-induced nap in a dream coma with Faith, the mayor tries to suffocate her with the hand, but is thrown across the room by a recharged Angel. Graduation day arrives and the mayor starts his boring speech, but soon the eclipse happens and he transforms into a giant 60-foot snake, clearly compensating for something. However, he forgot he's at an American school, so in a moment of pure bellicose pedagogy, all the students pull flamethrowers and rocket launchers from under their gowns. Snyder finally serves a purpose by getting swallowed whole by the snake, and Buffy lures the phallic monster into the library. But instead of recommending a book, she sprints out while Giles blows up the building with enough dynamite to level a city block. The school turns to ash, the mayor turns to barbecue, and Angel decides he's caused enough drama, abandoning Buffy in the rubble to go star in his own spin-off series, leaving her looking toward the future like someone who needs intensive therapy. Buffy arrives at university thinking she's going to live the American dream, but discovers the nightmare just changed zip codes. Her roommate is a psychopath who thinks pasting Celine Dion posters and snoring all night is acceptable, testing the Slayer's patience not to commit a hate crime. While she feels more lost than a blind person in a shootout on the giant campus, she meets Riley, a TA who looks like he drinks milk with pears, and Professor Walsh, who introduces herself as the dictator of psychology. Xander returns from his failed road trip revealing his car broke down and he had to wash dishes at a male club, which unfortunately didn't involve him taking his clothes off, sparing everyone that sight. Meanwhile, Giles is having a midlife crisis fueled by a friend with benefits, refusing to help Buffy because he wants to enjoy his forced retirement. To make matters worse, Eddie, the only friend Buffy made, disappears and comes back as a vampire, forcing her to him. Sunday, the leader of a gang of goth vampires who think they're the intellectual elite, beats Buffy up and even breaks her class protector umbrella. This awakens the blonde's fury. She invades their lair and beats the crap out of Sunday with a broken tennis racket. The Scooby Gang helps with the cleanup, but in the end, guys dressed in military commando gear kidnap a surviving vampire, proving college has secrets worse than the cafeteria food. College life begins and Buffy discovers the real hell is in vampires, but sharing a cubicle with Kathy, a control freak who plays Cher on repeat until anyone's ears bleed. While our Slayer tries to patrol, this psychotic roommate complains about missing milk and creates an accounting system for phone calls that would make an IRS auditor weep with pride. But the paranoia levels up when Buffy starts having dreams about orange demons pouring fluids on her, leading her to act like a complete lunatic. She steals Kathy's milk and chugs the liquid so voraciously it spills down her mouth, proving she doesn't know when to stop putting things in her throat. Meanwhile, Kathy cuts her toenails with the precision of a serial killer, and Buffy, in a display of questionable sanity, collects the clippings in a Ziploc bag to prove they grow back on their own. Her friends, being the geniuses they are, decide Buffy is possessed and tie her up, but she literally smashes their faces in and goes back to the dorm to settle things via domestic violence. In the middle of the fight, Buffy rips Kathy's face off like it's a cheap beauty mask, revealing the girl really was a soulless demon running away from her parents. The demon dad shows up, drags his daughter back to their dimension, and Willow takes the open vacancy to move in, sealing the deal by taking a sensual bite out of Buffy's sandwich while she watches intensely. Buffy decides to ignore all red flags and falls for Parker's smooth talk, a college guy with the emotional depth of a saucer, while Harmony returns from the dead as a vampire so dumb she makes rocks look like intellectuals. Harmony is now dating Spite, who is back and looking for the gem of Amara, a ring that makes vampires immortal, but he makes it clear he'd rather contract syphilis than listen to his girlfriend talk for 5 more minutes. Meanwhile, Anya breaks into Xander's house and strips without warning, offering casual sex like someone offering an expired discount coupon, and he accepts because his dignity died seasons ago. On the other side of campus, Buffy sleeps with Parker and wakes up to the classic morning after brush off, realizing she was used and discarded like fast food packaging, leaving her moping in corners while Spike unearths the magic ring. The platinum vampire finally gets the gem and decides to test his new invincibility by attacking Buffy in broad daylight. He beats up the Slayer and Xander, mocking her romantic choices, but his ego is bigger than his skill. Buffy, fueled by the rage of being played for a fool by Parker, beats the living daylights out of Spike, rips the ring off him, and forces him to flee into the sewers like the rat he is.
This way, we both burn.
Really? Let's see.
It's Halloween, and the gang decides to go to a frat party, because nothing screams fun like cheap alcohol and sweaty college students, while Buffy mopes over her jerked ex-fling, Oz, wearing a name tag that says God, cuts his hand and drips blood onto a symbol drawn on the floor, activating a house of horrors based on everyone's fears. Suddenly, the party turns into chaos with bats, real blood, and spiders, and Xander discovers his greatest fear is being irrelevant and invisible, which is actually just his daily reality. The house locks everyone in and the psychological torture begins. Oz starts turning into a werewolf, Willow gets attacked by her own spells, and Buffy falls into a basement full of the undead who want a piece of the blonde. Outside, Giles uses a chainsaw to cut through a door, proving British librarians solve everything with violence, and they discover they need to destroy the seal to stop the demon Lord Gaknar. Buffy smashes the symbol on the floor, expecting to face the most terrifying monster in existence, but the so-called Dark Lord materializes the size of an action figure, while the critter gives an evil speech with a voice like he inhaled helium. Buffy simply steps on him with her shoe, crushing the threat and the demon's pride in one go.
Buffy, when it comes to slaying,
Size doesn't matter? They're all going to abandon you, you know. Yeah.
Giles then realizes he forgot to read the footnote in the book that said actual size, ending the night with Xander eating candy and questioning Anya's bunny costume. Our favorite Slayer is still crying in the corner because Parker, that waste of oxygen she slept with once, dumped her. Meanwhile, Xander uses his fake identity as McLovin to get a job as a bartender, believing he's going to live the movie Cocktail, but in reality, he just manages to light imaginary lighters and embarrass himself. Things go south when Buffy decides to drown her sorrows at a college bar, where the town's intellectual elite are drinking a beer called Black Frost. What nobody knows is that the bar owner, tired of being mocked by moronic youths his whole life, spiked the drink with black magic to turn everyone into Neanderthals, which honestly didn't change the guy's default behavior much. Buffy starts mentally regressing, stealing sandwiches from extras' hands and shouting "beer good," proving her IQ has finally reached the level of her taste in men.
It's good. Good enough.
No more, but it's good.
While Xander tries to control the situation with the effectiveness of an umbrella in a hurricane, Buffy's 4 drinking buddies turn into literal cavemen and start destroying everything. Giles tries to help, but Buffy has gone full primate, drawing on the walls and demanding more alcohol. The situation gets chaotic when the Neanderthals invade Willow's room, who is trying to give Parker a moral lesson and set the place on fire. Cave Buffy arrives to the rescue, saves Willow, and in a moment of satisfying primitive clarity, saves Parker too, but immediately after knocks him over the head with a club, because instinct is instinct. In the end, the magic wears off, but the shame of acting like a drunken monkey is unfortunately eternal. Teen drama hits radioactive levels when Oz, the stoic werewolf who speaks 3 words a year, becomes hypnotized by Veruca, an indie band singer who reeks of trouble and wet dog. Willow, realizing her boyfriend is more interested in the vocalist than the redhead girlfriend who does everything for him, starts having academic jealousy attacks. Oz decides the best way to avoid cheating on his girlfriend is to lock himself in a cage with the woman he wants to bang. The genius plan obviously fails, and in the morning, Willow enters the room with breakfast only to find the 2 naked, sleeping spoon style, in a scene that destroys her heart and makes the audience question the hygiene of this situation. After Willow almost throws herself in front of cars and gets saved by Riley, the budget Captain America, Buffy decides to intervene. She uses Oz's superpowered nose to track the furry mistress, discovering Veruca went after Willow to eliminate the competition. In the lab, Veruca tries to kill Willow, claiming Oz's inner wolf needs freedom. Oz arrives just in time for the transformation, and what follows is a supernatural high-octane dogfight. Wolf Oz resolves the love triangle in the most brutal way possible. Buffy arrives armed with tranquilizer darts and takes Oz down before he turns Willow into a chew toy. The next day, Oz decides he needs to find himself and, instead of therapy, takes his van and leaves town, leaving Willow sobbing and Buffy thinking about how all the men in their lives are a disappointment. The episode focuses on the secret paramilitary organization known as the Initiative, which captures our favorite platinum vampire, Spike. He wakes up in a high-tech cell looking like a lab rat, where he discovers scientists are drugging the blood and running experiments. Meanwhile, Riley, the poster boy for military recruitment, finally does something useful in life and punches Parker in the face after the idiot starts bragging about his night with Buffy, instantly earning everyone's respect. But the joy is short-lived because Spike pretends he drank the drugged blood, causes chaos in the prison, frees another vampire just to use him as a human shield, and escapes. Spike runs back to Buffy's dorm, thinking he'll get revenge. He finds Willow alone and tries to bite her neck, but that's when the cosmic joke lands. He feels excruciating pain in his head and can't finish the job. The Initiative installed a chip in his brain that basically functions as violence castration, leaving him impotent when it counts. Riley and his soldier buddies invade the dorm with the subtlety of an elephant in a crystal shop. Buffy arrives for the party and starts a battle in the dark against Riley, where the 2 trade punches without knowing they're hitting their crush, proving this couple's communication is non-existent. Spike takes advantage of the confusion and flees through the window, leaving Riley and Buffy confused and bruised. Professor Walsh confirms the chip works, meaning Spike is now a vampire who doesn't bite, basically an elderly dog that only barks. While Buffy dispatches another vampire to hell, Angel watches everything from the bushes like the stalker ex-boyfriend and maniac he is, proving vampires with souls still have no concept of personal boundaries. The next day, Xander, the gang's favorite idiot, is digging holes at a construction site and, since gravity Buffy hates dumb people, the ground gives way, and he falls into an old, abandoned mission, releasing a green smoke that decides to create supernatural racial problems. Spike, who is running from the military and starving more than a college student at the end of the month, tries to beg for food but ends up tied to a chair in Giles's house like a sadomasochistic pet nobody wants. Meanwhile, the green smoke manifests as very pissed off Shumesh Native American spirits, and Buffy decides the best answer to historical is cooking a Thanksgiving dinner, because roast turkey solves everything. Anya carries Xander's dying body to Giles's house, and they discover he contracted smallpox, malaria, and syphilis all at once, turning the boy into a walking chamber pot of 18th century venereal diseases. Angel continues his mystic cuckold vigil in the shadows, but Xander ends up leaking the info later. The indigenous spirit decides to turn the party into a war zone, filling Spike with arrows while the vampire complains he just wanted a plate of food, serving as a convenient target for someone who can't move. The battle culminates with the spirit turning into a giant black bear, because subtlety sent its regards. Buffy fights the homicidal Yogi Bear and stabs him to death with his own knife, proving melee weapons beat environmental protection. The episode closes with everyone eating around the table, ignoring the fact they almost died because of a colonial massacre, while Spike remains tied up and whimpering for crumbs. Willow is in the dumps because the werewolf abandoned her, so she decides to invade his room to smell his sheets, which is super healthy and totally not obsessive behavior. Meanwhile, Riley invites Buffy for a picnic, and Spike continues being the chained up boy in Giles's bathtub, being fed pig blood and suffering supernatural bullying. Tired of wallowing, Willow gets drunk on beer and decides to do drunk magic, which never goes wrong. She casts a My Will Be Done spell to cure her heartbreak, but the magic misunderstands everything and turns into a cosmic mess. Giles goes blind and starts bumping into furniture like a dizzy cockroach. Xander becomes a literal demon magnet, and Buffy looks at Spike in the bathtub and decides he is the love of her life, planning an immediate wedding with the bleached corpse. And Willow is kidnapped by D'Hoffryn, who offers to turn her into a vengeance demon. She refuses the infernal job offer, which breaks the spell. Suddenly, Buffy and Spike realize they were swapping bodily fluids and almost vomit from disgust, while Giles regains his sight and realizes the mess the redhead caused. The next day, Buffy tries to convince Riley her engagement to the vampire was just a very elaborate joke, because gaslighting is the foundation of any healthy relationship. A group of villains called the Gentlemen arrive floating into town looking like a troupe of mimes straight out of a nightmare, stealing everyone's voice in Sunnydale so no one can scream while they surgically remove parts. Riley and Buffy try to talk about their feelings, but since everyone is now mute, the vibe resembles an unbearable French art film. Giles discovers the only thing that kills these guys is a real human scream, which is ironic since no one can make a peep. Spike, who apparently loves being humiliated, ends up tied up again, this time at Xander's place. When Xander sees Spike with a bloody mouth near a sleeping Anya, he freaks out and starts punching the vampire until he realizes he actually loves the ex-demon. The logical solution to this mute romantic moment is Anya making obscene mime gestures. Meanwhile, Willow meets Tara, a shy witch, and the two use the power of holding hands to move a soda machine in a lesbian metaphor that isn't subtle at all. Buffy and Riley end up invading the killer mime's hideout and fight in total silence. Buffy tries to explain via mime that they need to break the voice box, making staking gestures that look like an aggressive act to the air, until Riley finally understands, smashes the box, and Buffy lets out a sonic scream that makes the gentlemen's heads explode in a shower of delicious yellow goo. Voices recovered, and the episode ends with them sitting in the awkward silence of people who have too much to say and prefer to shut up. While Xander plays housemaid in the basement, he warns his parasite tenant Spike that nobody is afraid of him, which leads the vampire to try hitting Xander with a wrench. But the chip in his head lights up like a Christmas tree, and he falls humiliated wearing Xander's ridiculous Hawaiian shirt, looking like a British tourist lost at Disney. Giles ignores Buffy's panic about the end of the world because he's too busy trying to find a military command base, which obviously is under the university. Riley continues playing the ignorant normie, thinking demons are exotic animals and the Slayer is an urban legend, until a demon freaks out at his base. Meanwhile, Willow finds a corpse at a party with a symbol on its chest, because apparently every college party in this town ends in homicide possession. Spike decides life isn't worth living without biting necks and tries to commit by falling on a stake, but misses the target miserably, proving he's incompetent even at dying. Willow takes pity on this neutered dog and forces the gang to take him to stop a ritual of 3 demons in the destroyed school. In the library crater, Spike discovers he can beat up demons without triggering the chipped migraine and gets euphoric, tossing one of the creatures into the hellmouth like recyclable trash, thinking he was helping. Riley shows up playing hero with a grappling hook to save Buffy as the building collapses. The next day he tries to lie, saying he was playing paintball and full military gear, but everyone knows his intelligence is as limited as the life expectancy of a Slayer's boyfriend. Buffy is busy exploring Riley's tonsils when Willow invades the room and ruins the precoital mood. At a surprise birthday party, Buffy introduces her new sex to Giles and spends the whole night sucking up to Professor Walsh, making the old librarian feel as useful as an ashtray on a motorcycle. Giles gets depressed learning Walsh thinks he's an absent father figure and goes to get drunk with his old traitorous friend, Ethan Rayne. After drinking until they forget their own names, Giles wakes up the next morning transformed into a Fjarl demon, a horned creature that drools more than a rabid bulldog. He tries to ask Xander for help, but since he can only speak in demonic grunts, he gets chased out with frying pan hits to the head. The only being in town who understands his disgusting language is Spike, who agrees to help old Giles in exchange for cold hard cash, since Dignity doesn't pay crypt rent. The two go on a bizarre road trip in Giles's car, with the demon trying to control the urge to smash everything. Buffy finds the demon, thinks he killed Giles, and stabs him with a letter opener, almost committing accidental but then she looks into the creature's puppy dog eyes and realizes the screw-up. Ethan reverses the spell, Giles turns back into the grumpy Brit as always, and Walsh enters a macabre room called 314 to visit her monstrous genetic Tamagotchi. The gang plays poker while Buffy impresses Walsh by acing all the initiative's physical tests, getting promoted to the Army's official mascot. Willow tries to have a cute moment with Tara but refuses her gift to run after Buffy at the club, getting abandoned immediately after when the military pagers go off. Xander is left twiddling his thumbs while Buffy and Riley go kill demons and then return to the dorm to play Doctors Without Borders. The bizarre detail is that Professor Walsh watches they via hidden cameras, proving voyeurism is part of her PhD. Forrest, jealous of Riley, orders his team to tag Spike with a tracker, forcing the vampire to beg Giles for help to get the device out of his ass. Walsh decides Buffy is a threat and sends the blonde on an easy mission, which is actually a trap in a sewer with 2 giant demons and a broken toy gun. While Giles operates on Spike's shoulder in a dirty bathroom, Buffy proves the script is on her side, kills the 2 monsters with her bare hands, and sends a threatening message to Walsh via security camera.
Trust me when I say you're gonna find out.
The old woman panics and, in a genius move, unleashes her secret project, Adam. The cybernetic Frankenstein wakes up, giant skewer through his creator's chest, and calls her Mommy, showing that homeschooling in this family is truly piercing. Buffy updates her band of misfits on the drama with the initiative, and everyone questions whether her military boy toy Riley knew about the death trap his professor set up. Riley shows up at Giles's place looking for answers, but throws a hissy fit when he sees Spike, identifying him as Hostile 17, proving he can only count to 17. He refuses to accept that his beloved Professor Walsh is a psychopath, acting like a dutiful sheep in denial. Meanwhile, Adam, a Frankenstein monster on steroids, crawls out of the vents after letting Walsh's body go cold. He approaches a random little boy for some philosophical chats about nature, clearly skipping the childhood phase. Dr. Engelman enters room 314, slips in a pool of blood in a scene worthy of a slapstick comedy routine, and finds Walsh dead. Forrest accuses Buffy of staking the old lady because logic isn't this battalion's strong suit. Giles wakes up grumpy in Xander's basement, where the girls are watching cartoons until they see on the news that a kid has been slaughtered. Buffy heads out to hunt the Polgara demon, and Riley, ignoring medical orders and common sense, orders his soldiers to do the same. Buffy tries to apologize in the park, but Riley announces that Mommy Walsh is dead and asks if Buffy is happy, delivering some unbearable teenage drama. Willow tries a spell to locate demons, but Tara discreetly sabotages the magic, proving that betrayal starts early. Buffy looks for info at Willie's bar, but Riley shows up shaking, sweating, and his hand raw, looking like an addict going through demonic withdrawal. He points a gun at an innocent bystander, so Buffy takes the basket case to Xander's basement to rest. When he wakes up, he shoves Willow and runs off to hunt Buffy. Disguised as a generic scientist, Buffy infiltrates the initiative with Xander and overhears that the soldiers are suffering withdrawal from the drugs spiked in their lunch. Adam shows up, throws a body on the floor to get attention, and shoves a floppy disk into his chest to boot up his Windows 95 operating system, revealing he's part human, demon, and machine. He calls the dead Walsh mommy, kills Engelman, and injures Riley before escaping. In the hospital, Riley clutches Buffy's scarf like a security blanket, totally emotionally and chemically dependent. In a bizarre dream, Faith and Buffy are making a bed until Faith's blood stains the pristine white sheets, and Buffy stabs her, showing their friendship is as healthy as ever.
Damn. Just when we made it so nice.
In the real world, Xander plays with a broken initiative gun and electrocutes himself, proving natural selection failed him. Meanwhile, Faith wakes up from her coma, rips out the tubes, and walks out of the hospital thinking it's still graduation day. She steals a girl's clothes and finds out she missed all the fun of the school's destruction and the mayor's death. Riley tries to escape the military hospital, but his friends try to stop him, unsuccessfully. Faith continues having hallucinations where Buffy kills the mayor and runs, falling into open graves. Wandering through Sunnydale, she eavesdrops on the Scooby Gang planning to attack Adam and discovers Buffy is living the life she wanted. Riley asks who Faith is, and Buffy tells an edited version of the story, omitting the part involving Angel so as not to bruise the soldier's fragile ego. Faith receives a posthumous VHS tape from the mayor via a demon mailman, where he says the world has no place for her and leaves a gift in a mysterious box so she can go out in style. Faith breaks into Buffy's house, punches her mom Joyce, and takes her hostage, criticizing the daughter's lack of visits. Buffy crashes through the window ready to brawl, and the two destroy the entire house trading blows. The Watchers Council sends 3 men in black to capture Faith. The police arrive at the climax of the fight, at which point Faith puts the mayor's magical device on her hand and grabs Buffy's hand. A light shines. They look at each other confused, and then Buffy punches Faith, knocking the brunette out. But when the police take Faith away in cuffs, the real Buffy spits out the phrase 5 by 5 with the blonde's voice, revealing the body swap magic worked and the mess is just beginning.
Five by 5.
Piloting Buffy's body, Faith tries to get used to the new chassis by taking a long bath and touching herself in ways that would worry the censors, testing phrases in the mirror, and putting on makeup like someone who charges by the hour. She uses Joyce's credit card to buy a plane ticket and goes to the Bronze to grind on strangers and humiliate Spike. She teases the vampire by describing what she'd do to his body, leaving the peroxide blonde aroused and confused before leaving laughing. Meanwhile, the real Buffy is trapped in Faith's body inside an armored truck with some sadomasochistic Brits from the council. She tries to explain the swap, but they don't care. Faith, in Buffy's body, seduces Riley. The goofy soldier is shocked that his Puritan girlfriend has suddenly turned into an insatiable sex machine and decides to enjoy the moment, unaware he's sleeping with the psychopathic enemy. Riley says he loves her, which leaves Faith more confused than the script of this episode. Adam, the philosopher cyborg, convinces a group of vampires led by Boone to serve him. Buffy, in Faith's body, kicks the guards' asses, escapes the truck, and runs to Giles's house. She convinces the librarian of her identity by reminding him of when he turned into a demon and slept with her mother, a trauma no one forgets. Willow and Tara create a new magical device to undo the swap. Faith sees on the news that vampires have taken hostages in a church and, fighting her instinct to run, decides to play hero. She enters the church, kills vampires, and fights Boone. Buffy arrives with the magical cavalry. The two slayers fight, and Faith, in Buffy's body, starts punching her own true face into the floor, screaming insults. Buffy manages to grab her hand with the magical device. They switch bodies back, and Faith escapes on a freight train before she has to deal with the consequences. The next day, Buffy and Riley realize he slept with Faith in her body, guaranteeing months of intensive therapy for the couple. The Scooby Gang is on a standard cemetery hunt, but when they realize the vampire nest is too big for their usual incompetence, they decide to ask for help from the supreme being of the universe, Jonathan. Meanwhile, Willow uses her hacks to find an entrance, but obviously, our favorite pint-sized god Jonathan already has a better plan, better weapons, and even humiliates Giles at chess just for kicks. In the crypt, Jonathan the vampires while Buffy stands in the corner like a useless extra, receiving pats on the back and motivational advice from the master. Outside, paparazzi attack the star, but he smells peroxide and cheap hair gel in the shadows and calls Spike out for a fight. The blonde vampire, completely verbally humiliated, decides to call Buffy Betty for the rest of the episode because apparently her irrelevance has reached new levels. While the US Army basically asks Jonathan for permission to breathe, he explains that a demon, who looks like a rejected modern art project, has a uranium source in its chest. But not everything is sunshine in the world of perfection, because a crazy stalker fan is attacked by a horned monster, and Jonathan starts sweating bullets. Even so, he continues being the badass, giving love advice to Riley and shooting apples while blindfolded, because vision is for the weak. When Buffy starts suspecting that this world, where the high school nerd is Neo from The Matrix and Johnny Sins combined, is kind of weird, the gang thinks she's just jealous. But Anya, an expert in bizarre realities, confirms it's possible to create worlds where there is nothing but shrimp, so a world where Jonathan is king is a piece of cake. They discover the Short King cast an ego-boosting spell that created a monster containing all the evil necessary to balance his goodness. Buffy and Jonathan go to the cave. He almost throws her in the pit, but in the end, the blonde reclaims the spotlight. The monster falls, and reality goes back to being the usual mediocre misery. Buffy and Riley decide that hunting demons is too tiring and that their life's true mission is to break the dorm bed in a competitive mating marathon that lasts the entire episode. While the two test the durability of the springs and the audience's patience, Xander, in a moment of pure decadence, is driving an ice cream truck and trying to convince Anya to have The party at the Lowell's place is in full swing, but the vibe is weird. Buffy and Riley are giving off so much energy that even the walls seem to moan with pleasure when someone touches them. Spike and Anya get wasted at the bronze, lamenting the loss of their powers and realizing they are the only interesting characters left. Meanwhile, in the House of Erotic Horrors, Xander plays Spin the Bottle, kisses a girl who freaks out, and Willow tries to find Tara but only finds hallucinations of people drowning. The house finally gets annoyed with the extras' lack of action and locks everyone in, tying Spike up in leather, which he probably enjoyed, while Buffy and Riley continue ignoring the apocalypse to break world records for
Buffy!
Giles, in a legendary midlife crisis moment, is singing The Who at the coffee shop, completely oblivious to the chaos. They discover the house was an orphanage for teenagers punished by a religious nutjob, and now the poltergeists are feeding off the main couple's infinite The magical solution involves Willow and Tara doing a seance that goes wrong, Xander being forcibly baptized in a dirty bathtub, and Anya saving the day. When they finally break down the bedroom door, Buffy and Riley are there, disheveled and complaining that no one knocked before interrupting, proving the true villain of this episode was a total lack of self-awareness. While the gang discusses absolutely nothing at Giles's house, Oz shows up at the door looking like he hasn't slept in 3 years, sending Willow into a panic and making the atmosphere heavier than Xander's browser history. Riley, demonstrating all his military alpha male insecurity, starts a hate speech against demons, unaware he's bad-mouthing his girlfriend's ex, proving intelligence isn't a requirement in the army. Oz reveals he learned to control the inner wolf in Tibet through meditation and herbal tea, and that he came back to win Willow over. But the redhead is too busy discovering new horizons with Tara. When Oz catches Tara's scent on Willow's clothes, his Buddha self-control goes down the drain. He turns into a furious werewolf and chases the poor girl until he's captured by the Initiative, who love kidnapping pets. Riley sees the scientists torture Oz and finally realizes that maybe, just maybe, the guys building Frankenstein monsters in the basement aren't the good guys. He rescues the werewolf, becomes a fugitive, and decides to live in the ruins of the high school because nothing says mental stability like sleeping where you almost died 50 times. In the end, we have the classic farewell moment in the van, where Oz realizes Willow's presence makes him unstable and decides to leave forever, clearing the path for Tara. Willow, in a romantic move involving energy conservation, lights a candle using magic for Tara, promising she'll make it all worth it, and Tara blows out the candle, ending the episode before anyone else turns into a monster due to hormones. Spike decides the best war strategy isn't biting necks, but acting like a gossiping teenage girl to implode the Slayers group from the inside out. Meanwhile, our generic super soldier Riley puts on the clown clothes Xander brought, proving bad fashion taste is contagious, and accidentally discovers that the perfect happiness that took Angel's soul was basically a steam fight with Buffy. This leaves the military man with a bruised ego and insecurity the size of the Initiative. While the Scooby Gang collapses thanks to the lies planted by the Platinum Vampire, Angel shows up in town for a chat but ends up running into Riley in the middle of a jealous fit. The result is a pissing contest where the vampire with a soul and the steroid-pumped soldier decide to measure who has the biggest sword and who can take more punishment, destroying the scenery like two brainless brutes. Riley uses electricity, Angel uses body slams, and neither uses their brain. The situation gets worse when Buffy tries to break up the fight between her two alpha males, and ends up hearing a bunch of nonsense from her so-called friends at Giles's house. Xander, drunk on bitterness, accuses the Slayer of only using him for grunt work, while Willow complains that nobody cares about her relationship with Tara. The argument reaches critical teenage drama levels, and Buffy, realizing fighting demons is easier than dealing with this bunch of crybabies, tells everyone to get lost and decides to face the villain Adam alone, proving the prophecy of the solitary chosen one might just be a mental health precaution. Adam reveals his grand evil plan to create a master race with pieces of demons and humans, basically playing Lego with corpses, while Spike realizes his gossip backfired and now he's target number one. But since the script demands an emotional reunion, the gang resolves their differences in record time, proving nothing brings people together like the chance to break into a secret military base and blow stuff up. While descending the elevator shaft, the group decides the best way to beat a uranium-powered cyborg is to perform a forbidden spell where they all mentally enter Buffy at the same time. Xander, Giles, and Willow merge with the Slayer, transforming her into a radiant, glowing-eyed version of herself, now able to speak Sumerian, leaving Adam both confused and intrigued. The fight turns into a one-sided massacre where Matrix Buffy stops bullets in mid-air and humiliates science's supreme creation. Riley, who finally dug the chip out of his chest with a piece of glass in a scene that would make anyone lose their lunch, kills the zombie of his friend Forrest with the delicacy of a bulldozer. Meanwhile, Super Buffy decides to end the game, disintegrating the power source and turning the villain into scrap metal. The season ends with the government deciding that maybe, just maybe, creating monsters in the basement isn't the best public policy. After saving the world and stuffing themselves with movies, the gang passes out on the couch and the episode turns into an acid trip that would make Salvador Dali jealous. Each one dives into their own surreal nightmare, starting with Willow painting poetry on Tara's naked back and being persecuted by a stage play where she doesn't know her lines, because apparently a nerd's biggest fear is academic failure and walking around naked on stage. Xander has the most pathetic dream of all, being seduced by Buffy's mom and finding his dad in the basement, all while being chased by a man holding cheese, proving the male mind is a disturbing place full of context-free dairy. Giles tries to play the responsible father figure by singing on stage, but ends up getting attacked by a feral girl who clearly hates musicals. It all culminates with Buffy, who discovers that the Union spell pissed off the first Slayer, an entity who hates teamwork as much as she hates shoes. They fight in a dream desert where the villain tries to impose the rule that Slayers must be solitary and miserable. But Buffy, tired of all the metaphysical drama, simply decides she's not in the mood to play, ignores the monster's existence, and wakes everyone up, proving the best weapon against ancestral nightmares is the absolute indifference of a girl who just wants to finish her movie. The blonde Slayer decides sleep is for the weak and goes out to patrol the cemetery before heading back to bed with Riley, who continues to be as interesting as a beige door. But the peace doesn't last long because two delivery guys drop a giant coffin at a mansion and obviously something with claws comes out for a snack. Meanwhile, Giles creates drama saying he's going back to England because he feels useless, a classic midlife crisis for someone whose only job is cleaning glasses. In the cemetery, Buffy meets a vampire who materializes from cheap dry ice fog and introduces himself as Dracula. The guy is a world-famous celebrity bloodsucker, but when Buffy tries to stick him, the weirdo turns into smoke. Xander, who never misses a chance to be made a fool of, gets hypnotized by the Count and becomes the employee of the month, starting to eat spiders like popcorn while defending his dark master with the fanaticism of someone who just joined a pyramid scheme. Dracula invades Buffy's room, and she freezes, unable to resist while he bites her neck in a scene with more tension than the time slot allows. Riley, the clueless boyfriend, discovers the marks and decides to storm the castle with Giles. Inside, Buffy drinks the vampire's blood in a weird vibe, but a flash of memory makes her regain consciousness, and the brawl begins. She Dracula. He turns to dust and comes back. She stabs him again. He tries to come back but realizes the humiliation is too much and flees like a fart cloud.
You think I don't watch your movies? You always come back. I'm standing right here.
In the end, Buffy convinces Giles to be her watcher again for training, but when she gets home, she finds a random girl in her room. Her mom says it's her sister, Dawn, and Buffy acts like this girl has always existed, ignoring the fact that the audience is more confused than a blind man in a firefight. Giles tries to put Buffy in a meditative state, but the Slayer has the emotional range of a teaspoon and falls flat on her face, distracted by her little sister Dawn, who apparently spawned into the script and now lives to be annoying. Giles, trying to justify his existence, takes the two sisters for a ride in his new convertible that he doesn't know how to drive, proving the midlife crisis hit hard. They arrive at the magic shop and find the owner dead, because in Sunnydale, the mortality rate for business owners is 100%. Meanwhile, Harmony, the dumb blonde vampire who manages to be more useless than Xander, gathers her minions to attack the Slayer. Dawn, in a display of negative genius, invites the vampire into the house, proving natural selection failed her. Xander kicks Harmony out, but Spike's blonde ex-girlfriend doesn't give up and kidnaps Dawn to use as bait. Buffy arrives at the lair to save her useless sister and decimates the minions, leaving only Harmony, who flees, and one last vampire whom Buffy kills by a wooden unicorn horn into his chest, a fatal and hilarious penetration. Giles decides to buy the magic shop to profit from other people's misery, and Dawn writes in her diary that she's going to surprise everyone, probably with more stupidity. Xander, the king of failures, is apartment hunting, but reality knocks on the door and he realizes his bank balance is as non-existent as his relevance in fights. During a search at the dump for a demon named Toth, the creature fires a beam that hits Xander. Turns out the beam splits the guy in two. A confident, charming, successful Xander and a whiny, weak, pathetic Xander, who is basically the original version. The handsome Xander gets a top-tier apartment, earns a promotion, and scores a date with Anya. The dollar store version Xander panics, thinking the clone is going to steal his mediocre life, and runs to cry on Willow's shoulder. Anya, who has the libido of a rabbit in heat, is disappointed when she finds out there won't be a with both Xanders, since the demon's plan was to separate the strong qualities from the weak ones to kill the human Buffy later. Buffy kills the demon Toth with help from Riley, who is more insecure than a teenager going through puberty. Willow casts a spell to merge the two Xanders back together, ending Anya's dream of being the filling in a Xander sandwich. In the end, Riley confesses to Xander, now whole and average, that he knows Buffy doesn't love him as much as he loves her, confirming he is the most depressive and needy character in the series. While our favorite Slayer patrols the cemetery massacring newly risen vampires, she receives unwanted help from her dull military boyfriend and the peroxide vampire everyone loves to hate. Spike tries to act tough, but ends up falling into an open grave like a gothic sack of potatoes, proving his dignity went to hell a long time ago.
Spike, what are you doing here?
The next day, Riley continues to be irrelevant, but now with a heart beating faster than a virgin at prom, thanks to the super soldier drugs he's been taking. Meanwhile, Harmony decides she wants to kill Buffy and drags Spike into the plan, who only agrees because he's a certified masochist. Buffy's mom faints in the kitchen, interrupting breakfast and creating an atmosphere of cheap medical drama. But the focus returns to the discount Captain America, who needs surgery or he'll explode. Buffy decides to save her useless boyfriend and forces Spike to take her to an underground doctor, using the diplomacy of a slap in the face. Once there, Spike tries to convince the doctor to rip the chip out of his head, but the surgeon only pretends to operate and sews the vampire's scalp back up. When Spike tries to bite Buffy to test the cure, he finds out the hard way that he is still a neutered science experiment. Amidst the general brawl, Riley has a heart attack because the script needs drama, and Spike runs away, cursing everyone. The doctor finally operates on Riley, saving his life and guaranteeing more episodes of boredom for the audience. Graham warns that Riley is nothing without the army, which is the absolute truth. And to close with a flourish of secondhand embarrassment, Spike dreams he's making out violently with Buffy and declaring eternal love, only to wake up in a cold sweat next to Harmony and realize his life is a bad joke. Some random monks run for their lives carrying a ball of mystical energy, while in the present, Buffy beats up a vampire and gets a glowing orb as a prize from a security guard who is probably on drugs. At home, the Slayer realizes she's a third wheel in her own family since her mom and little sister Dawn are being unbearably affectionate. A buff blonde with a god complex who goes by the subtle name of the Beast starts rummaging through the guards' minds in search of the key. Buffy tries to use magic to figure out what's wrong with her mom, but only discovers that Dawn is basically a glitch in the Matrix, appearing and disappearing from photos like a badly made Instagram filter. When Buffy corners her sister, she realizes her memories are as fake as a $3 bill. Giles warns that the shiny ball is used to ward off an ancient evil, but Buffy is too busy fighting the superpowered blonde in an abandoned building. The Beast gives Buffy such a beating that the Slayer has to throw herself out the window with a monk to avoid becoming pate. Before kicking the bucket, the monk reveals the most telenovela plot twist of the season. The key of cosmic energy was turned into flesh, bone, and teenage annoyance, and sent to Buffy in the form of her sister Dawn. Now knowing her sister is actually a mystical flash drive in human form, Buffy goes back home full of Christian guilt. She finds Dawn in her room and decides to stroke her fake sister's hair, accepting that she'll have to protect this annoying energy source for the rest of her life, while the rest of the cast continues to understand absolutely nothing. Willow and Tara are in bed, studying spells, if you know what I mean, when they decide spooning is the best way to recover mana.
I figured she'd call us.
Buffy, now knowing her sister is a mystical flash drive in human shape, decides to move back in with her mom to protect the brat, inventing a flimsy excuse for her friends. Meanwhile, Tara's family decides to show up to ruin the mood. Her father is a conservative hillbilly who hates magic and wants to take his daughter away before she turns into a demon, because apparently in this family, women turn into monsters when they grow up. Tara gets desperate and casts a spell to hide her alleged demonic nature, but ends up making everyone blind to the actual demons that the goddess Glory sent to kill Buffy. The result is a ridiculous fight scene where Buffy punches the air and Spike helps beat up invisible monsters, just because he has nothing better to do. When the spell breaks and the demons turn into pate, Tara's family tries to drag her away by force. But before the family drama turns into a Jerry Springer episode, Spike resolves the situation with the delicacy of an ogre. He punches Tara in the nose. Since his chip activates and causes him pain, it is scientifically proven that Tara is human and the demon story was just a myth to control the women of the family. With a bloody nose but high morale, Tara tells her toxic family to get lost and stays with her friends. The episode ends with everyone dancing at the birthday party, completely ignoring that they almost died 5 minutes ago, while Willow and Tara levitate on the dance floor, probably high on love and magic. Our favorite blonde Slayer decides to play tag in the cemetery, but since her self-esteem is higher than the IQ of a doorknob, she ends up being humiliated by a random vampire who uses her own steak to make a new her stomach. But before she becomes a kebab, the insufferable Riley appears to save the day, proving that even a broken clock with zero charisma is right twice a day. Feeling that her combat skills are as useful as Riley is to the series, Buffy goes to whine to Spike, offering money in exchange for war stories. Spike, who never misses a chance to show off, tells tales of his days as William, a failed poet in 1880 who wrote verses so bad people preferred having nails driven into their skulls over listening to them. After being rejected by his crush, who called him inferior, he meets Drusilla, who promises he will be great and turns him into an emo bloodsucker. Back in the present, he proudly narrates how he killed 2 past Slayers, revealing the secret is that they all have a death wish, just like the audience's wish to skip Riley's scenes. The mood heats up and Spike, thinking he's in a cheap romance novel, tries to kiss Buffy. Her response is to shove him to the ground and tell him he is beneath her, delivering the greatest verbal castration in undead history. Spike grabs a shotgun, but finds her crying on the porch because her mother has a tumor. Faced with her tears, the killer vampire gives up and sits beside her, gently patting her back, proving that the friend zone is the most powerful force in the universe, capable of stopping even lead bullets. While Joyce prepares to have her brain scanned, the bunch of useless losers at the magic box tries to figure out who the new villain is. Without realizing, she literally walks into the shop, buys the ingredients for the apocalypse, and struts out in expensive designer pumps. Meanwhile, Riley breaks into the Summers house and finds Spike sniffing Buffy's pants. Riley throws the pervert into the sun, but the victory is short-lived because he continues to be irrelevant. To make the limp soldier's depression even worse, Dawn tells him he's good because Buffy doesn't cry over him like she did for Angel, confirming he is just the bland consolation prize. Glory uses her witchcraft supplies to transform a snake into a jacked demon that goes after Dawn. Buffy intercepts the monster and spends a long time beating the giant snake with a chain until it goes limp and lifeless, a manual labor activity that leaves Glory very frustrated at the window of her luxury apartment. At the hospital, the doctors confirm Joyce has a brain tumor, and Riley shows up in a turtleneck trying to be the perfect boyfriend. But Buffy is so focused on her mom, she doesn't even notice his hand trying to comfort her, leaving the soldier alone in the hallway like the disposable NPC he was born to be. Buffy's mom is about to have her skull open, so Willow decides to lighten the mood by bringing super useful gifts, like a beer hat, proving her social skills are in the negatives. Meanwhile, a meteor crashes in Sunnydale bringing a Queller demon, a gross space slug that loves eating crazy people. Since Joyce is delirious because of the tumor, she becomes the main course. The creature drops from the ceiling and spits a viscous white slime on Buffy's mom's face, covering her in sticky fluid in a scene that definitely shouldn't be in a show for young adults. Dawn hits the beast with a coat hanger and screams for help. Buffy arrives to save the day and finds Spike coming out of the basement where he was stealing photos of the Slayer for his private stalker collection, ignoring the fact that he is a pervert. The two unite in a violent choreography to stab the alien slug. Buffy finishes the creature off, and Spike reaches out a hand to help her up, creating that moment of tension that makes fanfics explode. That's when Riley kicks down the door with a military squad, arriving late to the party as always, only to hear Spike say he missed the show. At the hospital, Ben reveals he summoned the demon to clean up Glory's mess, because apparently being a nurse doesn't pay well enough. Joyce wakes up and says that even knowing Dawn is a mystical energy key, she still loves her, securing the happy ending before the next disaster strikes. While Buffy's mom survives the knife of a competent surgeon, the protagonist tries to survive a night with Captain Cardboard, also known as Riley, who gets offended because his superpowered girlfriend didn't cry like a weaned calf during While you sleep alone, Riley decides the best way to deal with his masculine insecurities is to run away from home, followed by Spike, everyone's favorite platinum blonde stalker. Turns out, the good guy Riley has a weird fetish for being but not in the fun way. He pays vampires to drain his blood in a dirty broth because apparently life with the Slayer isn't humiliating enough. When Spike takes Buffy to watch this horror show, she gets understandably nauseous.
Don't start slaying. This isn't what we're here for.
Riley gets an offer from some generic military guys to hunt demons in Central America, probably because he's tired of being the damsel in distress in Sunnydale. Buffy, furious, storms the magic shop and then burns down the vampire nest, turning the place into a giant barbecue, but the useless boyfriend had already bailed. Riley still has the audacity to blame Buffy for his bite addiction, giving a ridiculous ultimatum before leaving. Xander, who suddenly turned into a relationship counselor despite being a failure, decides to ignore his friend's bizarre betrayal and gives a speech blaming Buffy for losing this catch. She runs after her ex's helicopter, but arrives too late. Captain Cardboard flies away without looking back, leaving the Slayer alone on the helipad, proving that in Sunnydale, not even air transport waits for teenage drama. With the house free of whiny military men, Xander and Anya speculate about Buffy's tragic love life in bed, proving that gossip is the best aphrodisiac. Meanwhile, Giles decides to flee to England, leaving the magic shop in the hands of Anya and Willow, a combination as stable as nitroglycerin in a washing machine. Obviously, the ex-demon's lack of social skills collides with the redhead witch's arrogance, resulting in a catfight that would make any teenager drool. Across town, Spike practices his love confession with a plastic mannequin, but since he's an emotional wreck, he ends up beating the doll with a box of chocolates, showing that romance is dead and possibly covered in cheap cocoa. At the shop, the girls' argument escalates until Willow accidentally summons a giant troll with a massive hammer and an uncontrollable urge to drink beer. The troll, whose name is Olaf and is Anya's ex-boyfriend from centuries ago, starts destroying Sunnydale looking for alcohol and victims. He invades the local club, where Xander tries to reason with the monster by suggesting he sit in a chair, a combat strategy as useless as Xander's existence itself. When Buffy arrives to save the day, the troll forces the carpenter to choose which of his two women should die. Since Xander is an indecisive coward, Buffy loses patience, beats the troll until he passes out, and dispatches him to another dimension, possibly one without shrimp. In the end, Giles returns to find his shop turned into rubble, while Dawn listens behind the door that she is a mystical key, because privacy in this house is an urban legend. Buffy's life turns into bureaucratic hell when the Watchers Council decides to visit Sunnydale to evaluate if she's competent, or if she should be fired for cause. Meanwhile, the villain Glory, who looks like a Victoria's Secret model with PMS, decides to drain the sanity of a poor mailman by her fingers into his head, proving she really likes sucking the intelligence out of men down to the last drop. The stuffy Brits shut down the magic shop and start treating the Slayer and her friends like incompetent interns. Buffy fails a fighting test and a history quiz, showing that saving the world doesn't give you extra college credits. While the protagonist is humiliated by old men in suits, Glory invades her house and threatens to kill everyone. Buffy's genius solution is to hide her mom and sister with Spike, who ends up becoming Joyce's best friend while watching soap operas and eating popcorn. Medieval knights who look like they escaped a LARP event attack Buffy in the middle of the street, but she beats the crap out of them and realizes that, actually, she runs this whole show. She goes back to the shop and demands that the council reinstate Giles with retroactive pay and stop being a pain. The Brits back down and finally reveal what they know. Glory isn't just some random demon you can kill with a plastic stake. She is a god, which means Buffy is officially screwed on a theological level. The low-budget Scooby-Doo gang gathers to discuss Buffy's birthday, and the fact that the villain Glory isn't just a blonde with PMS, but a god from a demon dimension who needs to suck people's sanity to avoid going bonkers. While Xander suggests hunting down this mystical key, Giles and Buffy exchange guilty looks and decide to finally tell them that the key isn't an object, but the annoying little sister Dawn, who was implanted in everyone's memories by monks who thought turning pure energy into a nagging teenager was a great protection idea. While Glory slaughters some medieval knights who showed up at the wrong gig, Dawn realizes everyone at the party acts weird when she mentions false memories, like that trip to the beach that never happened. Outraged by the fakery, she runs away and finds Spike, who was lurking around the house with expired chocolates, hoping to buy the Slayer's affection. Together, they break into the magic shop, where Dawn reads Giles's diaries and discovers she is, in fact, a biological hallucination that glows green for crazy people to see. She freaks out, cuts her arm, and the blood confirms her existence is a lie bigger than her Tinder profile. Dawn runs to the mental hospital to ask the crazies for consulting, but bumps into the handsome nurse Ben, who in a plot twist worthy of a Mexican telenovela, transforms into Glory.
She's here!
The goddess tries to drain the girl's brain, but Buffy comes in with a punch, with the help of the lesbian witches teleporting the villain into the sky to drop face first onto the ground. Buffy saves her sister and ensures that blood is blood, even if it's magic blood manufactured by monks. While Buffy tries to have a normal conversation with Spike at the newly renovated bar, Willow suffers from nosebleeds, probably because teleporting gods burns more neurons than watching reality TV. A train arrives at the station full of passengers who turned into juice boxes for vampires, but Buffy is more worried about her sister getting horror tips from Spike. Dawn, who has no filter, drops the bomb that the peroxide vampire has a crush on the Slayer, which makes Buffy throw up a little in her mouth. Spike tries to impress his crush by taking her to an infested warehouse, thinking killing vampires together counts as a romantic date. When he asks if she wants it to be a date, her reaction is pure disgust, proving that not even with black leather can he escape the aggressive friend zone. But the night gets worse when Drusilla returns to town, crazier than the Joker after snorting chalk dust, and tries to convince Spike to go back to being evil using a cattle prod to torture everyone. Spike, in a moment of misunderstood genius, chains Buffy in the basement to confess his love, offering to kill Drusilla as proof, because nothing says, "I love you," like a triple crime of passion. Harmony arrives with a crossbow to complicate everything. A brawl breaks out, and Spike ends up saving Buffy, only to get another monumental rejection. He tries to follow the blonde home, but literally hits his face on the door, discovering his invitation has been revoked, and now he'll have to cry in the cold shower of his crypt. Buffy uses poor Xander in a sumo suit as a punching bag to take out her frustration and anger at Spike, while a strange girl wanders the city asking for a guy named Warren with the subtlety of a brick. At a college party, Buffy tries to flirt with Nurse Ben, but Spike shows up to ruin the mood and try to hit on the new girl, April. The problem is, April has the strength of a tractor and throws the vampire through a window, because rejection is the only item on Spike's menu today. The gang discovers April isn't human, but a cybernetic built by the massive nerd Warren to be the perfect submissive girlfriend. The nerd, being a coward of the highest order, abandoned the robot to be with a real woman, but forgot to tell the machine, which is now programmed to love him or destroy everything in its path. Meanwhile, Spike tries to lie to his friends saying he was the hero against Drusilla, but Giles throws him against the wall and tells him the hard truth about being an obsessed loser. In the final confrontation, the robot's battery starts to die after a fight with Buffy. The Slayer sits there holding the machine's hand as she shuts down. Realizing even a robot has better luck in love than her, she decides to cancel her date with Ben. But Glory is the one who hears the message, creating a wonderful identity mix-up. Buffy gets home thinking the dog day is over, sees her mom on the sofa and calls for her. But Joyce is just sitting there, eyes open, staring into the void, delivering the season's most traumatic cliffhanger without warning.
What are you doing? Homie?
The Christmas flashback vibe is brutally interrupted when our Slayer tries to wake her mom and realizes she is cold, stiff, and unresponsive. She calls 911 and follows the operator's useless instructions, breaking her mom's ribs in a frantic CPR attempt. But the only thing she achieves is turning her thorax into a jigsaw puzzle of bones. The operator calls Joyce the body, proving the empathy training was successfully skipped. Paramedics arrive and there's that moment of collective hallucination where everything is fine, but reality kicks the door down and confirms Joyce has been permanently deleted from the server of life. While Buffy vomits her soul out in the hallway, Giles arrives thinking it's a battle against Glory, but only finds sadness and bureaucracy. At school, Dawn is busy getting bullied and flirting with a weirdo in art class, until Buffy shows up to ruin the romantic mood and tell her they are now orphans. Dawn collapses on the floor, delivering the most dramatic scene that drama class has ever seen. In the dorm, Willow freaks out because she can't find a blue shirt, proving grief makes everyone go cuckoo, while Xander, showing his legendary emotional stability, punches a wall and gets his hand stuck in the drywall because men resolve sadness by destroying real estate.
Sorry.
At the hospital, the doctor confirms it was an aneurysm, and not even Buffy's superpowers could have helped. Dawn, with negative survival intelligence, breaks into the morgue to see her mom and ends up waking a vampire who is taking a nap on the next table. Buffy bursts through the door, takes out the bloodsucker, and Dawn finally touches her mom's cold cheek, realizing her body temperature matched the room's atmosphere. Buffy is at the funeral home choosing the ideal casket because nothing screams eternal love like selecting padded wood to bury your mother. Spike tries to be a gentleman and bring flowers, but Xander, the watchdog of other people's morals, accuses the vampire of trying to farm affinity points with the blonde at an inappropriate time. Spike throws the bouquet on the ground and stomps off like a rejected diva. At the cemetery, Angel appears from the shadows with his impeccable hair gel just to make a VIP appearance and kiss Buffy, because apparently kisses from vampires with souls cure depression. Meanwhile, Dawn decides accepting death is for weak people and decides to play Underworld Harry Potter. She convinces Spike, who would do anything to please the Summers women, to help her steal a Gora demon egg. The vampire gets beaten up by the monster while the brat steals the ingredient, proving he is the biggest simp in this universe. Willow and Tara discover a witchcraft book is missing and realize the imminent screw-up. At Xander's apartment, he and Anya philosophize about life right after a mating session. Dawn completes the spell in her room, and Buffy arrives ready to give a lecture but ends up breaking down emotionally. Heavy, zombified footsteps approach the house. Buffy runs to open the door filled with morbid hope of seeing her mom reanimated Walking Dead style, but Dawn, in a rare display of last-second common sense, rips the photo and cancels the spell. Buffy opens the door to nothing, and the two end up crying on the floor, embraced by the vacuum of disappointment. Buffy decides she's too human and needs to reconnect with her killer side, so she goes to the desert to have hallucinations guided by a spirit puma, leaving her sister in the care of the Scooby Gang misfits. While the Slayer eats mystical dust, Spike receives his most shameful order. The Buffy bot, a robot identical to the protagonist, programmed with catchphrases and USB ports ready for action. Glory, the city's most mentally unstable goddess, sends her minions to watch the group. They catch Spike and the Robo Buffy training intensely in the cemetery in a scene that would make any mechanic blush, and erroneously conclude the platinum vampire is the key they're looking for. Xander and Anya also see the scene and are traumatized by the robot's acrobatic performance. Glory kidnaps Spike and starts a torture session, but the vampire takes the punishment in silence to protect the brat Dawn's identity, proving even the villain villain has more honor than half the cast. The gang discovers the Buffy bot in Spike's apartment and is disgusted by Warren's perverted engineering. Buffy returns from her spiritual acid trip, finds out she has a cybernetic doppelganger running around town, and leads the rescue. They raid Glory's lair, save the vampire who turned into a punching bag, and the robot ends up short-circuiting in the battle. Back at the crypt, Buffy poses as the robot to see if Spike spilled the beans. When he reveals he'd rather die than let Buffy suffer, she realizes the simp is actually loyal. She gives him a kiss, leaving the vampire confused and ensuring he remains obsessed with her for another 10 seasons. Buffy decides to drop out of college to take care of her sister, proving higher education is useless when you have monsters to kill, while Ben gets fired from the hospital because Glory spends too much time in the shared body's communal shower demanding information from blindfolded minions. Dawn and Buffy go to the principal's office to hear the brat has terrible grades, but Anya thinks it's the perfect time to philosophize about patriotism and money in the middle of a workday. Willow and Tara discuss their relationship with teenage drama, where Tara confesses she's afraid of the redhead's power, and Willow accuses her girlfriend of thinking her lesbianism is just an experimental phase. Tara leaves alone and ends up sharing a park bench with Glory, who deduces the blonde is the key, just because she's new to the group. Willow rushes to fix the mess, but Glory decides to turn Tara's brain into mashed potatoes before letting her go. Buffy tries to be the voice of reason with Willow, but the witch is thirsty for revenge and goes after the goddess with black magic. The result is obvious. Glory beats Willow like a boss until the Slayer arrives to save the day. Everyone flees, but Glory promises revenge.
Serpents now appear. They used to bow down to gods.
The next day, while the group feeds the lobotomized Tara applesauce, the goddess smashes through the bedroom wall. Tara, with the IQ of an amoeba, points at Dawn and hands over on a silver platter that the annoying girl is the damn key that will destroy the universe. Now that Glory knows the energy meatball is Dawn, the game flees in a Winnebago RV sunproofed against daylight, a super discreet choice for people being hunted by a fashionista deity. Spike crashes the trip uninvited, and Ben tries to explain to a minion that he's just the human packaging for a crazy goddess. Medieval knights attack the bus doing violent RPG cosplay. Spike stops a sword with his bare hands to show off, but Giles nearly gets hit and ends up toppling the vehicle. Hiding in a dilapidated gas station, Buffy discovers Glory was banished from a hell dimension for being unbearable, and her only weakness is killing the human host, Ben. The problem is Ben is right there inside tending to Giles' wound, and nobody notices the danger. The Knights General tries to convince Ben to kill Dawn, but Glory takes control of the body, kills the general, and brawls with the whole gang. The goddess wins easily, kidnaps the little sister, and disappears into the horizon. Buffy realizes her plan was absolute trash and sits on the ground crying in a catatonic state, shutting her brain down just like Windows hitting the blue screen of death when you need it most. With Buffy cosplaying a vegetable in a coma, Willow needs to enter the Slayer's mind to reboot the system. Meanwhile, Spike tries to explain for the 1000th time that Ben and Glory are the same person, but magic makes humans' brains melt and forget the information instantly, proving intelligence isn't this group's strong suit unless you're dead. Inside the protagonist's head, Willow watches a loop where Buffy suffocates her sister with a pillow, admitting she gave up fighting the moment she put a book back on the shelf. In the real world, Ben regains consciousness and tries to flee with Dawn, but Glory offers immortality and a separate existence, so the cowardly doctor trades the girl for his own skin without thinking twice. Spike and Xander go investigate a guy named Doc and discover he's a Glory worshipper with a giant, disgusting tongue that would be a hit in bizarre adult films. They get beaten up but steal a box. Buffy finally wakes up from her mental hissy fit crying in Willow's arms. Back at the magic shop, Giles drops the bomb that the blood ritual is about to start, and the only way to stop the apocalypse is by killing Dawn, basically suggesting that the homicidal fantasy Buffy had 5 minutes ago might be the only practical solution. A generic vampire tries to attack an idiot extra in an alley, but Buffy appears to save the day. The ungrateful boy complains he was saved by a girl, proving natural selection failed with with this imbecile. Meanwhile, the gang discovers Glory intends to use Buffy's annoying sister's blood to break down dimensional walls and unleash hell on Earth. Giles, being the only one with functional neurons, politely suggests sacrificing the kid to save humanity, but Buffy refuses because the girl is literally made of her flesh. While Xander and Anya take advantage of the end of the world to test the durability of the basement furniture, they find the Buffy bot, Spike's high-tech blow-up doll. The conflict escalates to a giant phallic tower built by lunatics. Glory begins the ritual to penetrate the dimension but finds out fighting protagonists is boring. Buffy uses an enchanted troll hammer to soften the goddess's face, while Xander plays demolition with a giant ball. Giles decides he has no patience for redeemed villains and suffocates Ben with his bare hands, proving librarians are the real psychopaths. At the top of the tower, with the portal open spitting out monsters, Buffy realizes the only way to close the hole is to throw herself into it. She gives a motivational speech to her crying sister, launches herself into the energy vortex, and dies heroically, leaving a grave that says she saved the world a lot. Basically, she quit the server before the admin could ban her. Five months have passed, and the Scoobies are playing ventriloquist with the Buffy bot's cybernetic corpse to fool the city's vampires. Willow takes command using telepathy and magical arrogance, while Giles decides he's too old for this supernatural daycare and buys a one-way ticket to England, leaving Anya hysterical with the paperwork. The robot keeps having programming glitches, hugging Dawn at inappropriate moments and almost revealing she's better suited for a motel room than a fight. Spike becomes Dawn's official babysitter, proving humiliation has no limits. While a gang of biker demons rejected from Mad Max discovers the current Slayer vibrates and makes mechanical noises when hit, Willow decides death is just a suggestion and resolves to bring her friend back, sacrificing Bambi in a forest to use deer blood in the ritual. That's right, black magic with the Disney cast. While the bikers invade the city to smash everything, the group gathers at the cemetery. Willow spits snakes, but is interrupted by the demons who destroy the sacred urn. They think they failed, but underground, Buffy wakes up inside the coffin, realizing she took the longest and most claustrophobic nap in history. The episode ends with the protagonist having a geological panic attack 6 feet under. The Buffy bot is getting beaten up by the bikers, which probably voids the factory warranty, while the real Buffy claws out of the dirt doing a Thriller zombie cosplay, traumatized and dirty. Xander carries a passed out Willow, thinking the spell failed because they broke the magic cookie jar, but little do they know their friend is already wandering the streets of Sunnydale looking like she ate something bad. The demons decide to do a mechanical and tie the Buffy bot's limbs to 4 different motorcycles, dismembering the doll in the public square while the real Buffy watches everything, thinking she's seeing her own body being torn apart. That's what I call radical exposure therapy. The gang finally finds the real Buffy, but she flees like a frightened animal to Glory's old tower. In the climax, Dawn finds her sister at the top of the unstable structure. Buffy contemplates jumping again because the afterlife seemed more relaxing, but the tower starts to collapse. They use a cable to descend in a low-budget Mission Impossible moment. In the end, everyone hugs, ignoring that Willow played God, and that Buffy now has enough PTSD to fill an entire asylum. The Scooby Gang runs around like headless chickens toward the Slayer's house, thinking resurrecting the dead is as easy as making instant noodles. When they get there, they find Buffy staring at nothing, looking like she just woke up from a botched lobotomy, while Dawn warns that Daddy Giles went to buy cigarettes in England and hasn't come back. At that moment, Spike, the peroxide vampire with the blonde fetish, breaks into the house looking for the annoying little sister, and although at first he thinks he's seeing a robot, he notices the traumatized eyes of someone who's seen worse things than his browser history, and realizes the original Buffy is back. He takes her wounded hands, remembering when he had to dig his way out of his own grave, proving he counted every single one of the 147 days she was gone, which is romantic or creepy, depending on which restraining order you prefer. When the rest of the useless bunch arrives asking stupid questions, Buffy runs upstairs because the tired protagonist energy is too much to handle. Meanwhile, Xander and Anya go out to get food and run into Spike, who throws in their faces that bringing someone back from the dead without reading the instruction manual usually ends badly. And surprise, it does end badly, because the photos in Buffy's room start turning into skulls and an invisible entity starts taking a tour through her friends' bodies. They then discover that Willow's spell, the witch addicted to power, created a demon that needs to kill Buffy to continue existing. The creature possesses Xander and warns it is coming to finish the job. Buffy gets beaten up by an invisible ghost until the witches decide to be useful and solidify the monster, allowing the Slayer to use an axe to turn its head into wall decoration.
Solid.
The next day, Buffy tries to feign normalcy, but when she finds Spike hiding in the shadows like the professional stalker he is, she drops the bomb. She wasn't in hell suffering eternal torture. She was in heaven, at peace, complete and happy, until her idiot friends pulled her back to this world of bills to pay and ugly demons. She looks into the vampire's eyes and reveals the real hell is having to look at their faces every day, but demands he never tell the truth, deciding to live the lie so she doesn't break the fragile little hearts of her incompetent saviors. Buffy tries to fix a pipe in the basement, but since her skill set is limited to stakes and violence, she ends up turning the house into an Olympic-sized swimming pool of sewage. A plumber hands her a bill that would make even Batman cry, and the Slayer discovers she's more broke than her love life, while Anya suggests charging people to save their lives, which is honestly capitalism at its peak. Buffy decides to go to the bank and beg for a loan, but the universe hates poor people, so the manager denies the money because she has no job or collateral, plus being a Slayer doesn't exactly show up on a tax return. The meeting is interrupted by a demon crashing through the wall, and Buffy has to fight it in a pantsuit, saving the life of the ungrateful banker who won't give her a single cent in return. Meanwhile, we are introduced to the most pathetic trio of villains in history: Jonathan, Warren, and Andrew, three virgins living in a mom's basement who decided that playing supervillain is better than trying to touch a woman. They summon the demon Fashnik to rob banks, but get angry when the monster complains that the Slayer is still alive. Giles returns from England and discovers Willow thinks she's the supreme goddess of magic. He gives her a massive British chewing out, calling her an arrogant amateur, and Willow almost turns him into a toad before remembering she still needs a ride home. That night, Spike shows up for moral support, or just to see if he can get some action, but the demon invades the house, interrupting the moment. They fight the beast all over the place, and Buffy is desperate not to break the furniture because she doesn't have the money to replace even a toothpick. The battle ends in the basement, where the demon makes the fatal mistake of threatening the new pipes, and Buffy, fueled by the rage of someone with overdue bills, annihilates the creature. In the end, while Giles and Buffy try to organize the mountain of debt, the phone rings. It's Angel, the vampire with a soul and too much hair gel, wanting to meet her. Buffy dumps all her financial responsibilities onto Giles's lap and runs to the meeting, proving that problems with undead ex-boyfriends always take priority over imminent bankruptcy. Buffy returns from her meeting with Angel acting mysterious, probably because the conversation was as depressing as a rainy day, and decides she needs to get her life on track. She tries attending college classes with Willow, but the trio of virgin nerds is parked in a van outside with surveillance equipment and a painting of the Death Star, ready to test her skills as if she were a video game character. Warren plants a device on Buffy that makes time move in slow motion for her, making the poor girl look like she's on heavy drugs in the middle of campus while the world spins in turbo mode. After being academically humiliated, she tries to get a job in construction with the useless Xander, but of course, the virgins in the van summon demons to destroy the site. Buffy kills the monsters, but since she destroyed the workplace in the process, Xander fires her, proving that friendship ends where financial loss begins. Not satisfied with being humiliated, she goes to work at the magic box. Jonathan casts a time loop spell, trapping Buffy in an eternal cycle of trying to sell a candle and fetching a mummy hand from the basement. The hand, obviously, is one of those dead things that love grabbing blondes, and it attacks Buffy repeatedly. She kills the hand, fails the sale, time resets. Buffy slowly goes insane, crying and questioning her existence until finally managing to push the mummified hand onto the customer. After a day of being the plaything of 3 incels with magic, Buffy decides to get wasted with Spike. They go to a demon bar where Spike plays poker for kittens, which is bizarre even for him. Drunk and stumbling, Buffy sees the trio's black van and in a moment of alcoholic clarity, realizes she's been played for a fool all day. A summoned demon appears, but Buffy, fueled by alcohol and hatred, kicks the beast away without even dropping her bottle. In the end, she goes back home complaining about life to Daddy Giles, who offers a check to cover expenses. Buffy thanks him, saying she feels safe because he'll always be there, which makes his smile vanish, because everyone knows that when a father figure looks worriedly at the horizon, he's about to abandon you to force you into adulthood. It's Halloween. The one-day supernatural creatures should take a day off, but the magic shop is more crowded than your ex's Tinder. While Xander pretends to be a pirate and Anya roller skates around selling capitalist junk, Buffy and Spike have that awkward talk in the basement where he wants to patrol and she thinks he wants to use his meat steak. After a day of slave labor, Xander looks at Anya counting money and in a burst of brilliance comparable to licking an electrical socket, decides to announce their engagement. The gang feigns happiness, but deep down, everyone knows this smells like divorce and alimony. To make matters worse, Dawn lies saying she's sleeping at a friend's house, but actually goes out for a night of teenage vandalism with two random guys, Zach and Justin. While Willow uses excessive magic on the party decorations just to annoy Tara, Dawn and her new delinquents break into an old man's house, who ends up murdered by Justin, who, surprise, is a vampire. Dawn, demonstrating the genetic intelligence of the Summers family, accepts stolen money and stays in the car with the walking corpse. Meanwhile, Dawn gets her first kiss from Justin, who immediately tries to dine on the girl. Giles finds the other vampire boy and dusts him, thinking he was saving the girl, but turns out he just murdered an extra. At the cemetery, Buffy arrives with Spike and gives her little sister a mom lecture about making out with vampires. Hypocrisy so thick it almost opens a black hole. The general brawl begins. Justin knocks Dawn down and tries to bite, but she finally uses her brain and a crossbow bolt to turn her crush into dust. In the end, Tara magically forgets the fight thanks to Willow, who continues digging the relationship's grave with a heat-seeking shovel. Buffy is patrolling the cemetery when she realizes that instead of grunts, the demons are belting out falsettos. The entire town has been transformed into a low-budget Disney musical where everyone is forced to sing their deepest and most humiliating secrets. Xander and Anya sing about how terrified they are of the wedding, and Giles sings about how Buffy is an emotional leech who needs to grow up. Even a random guy tap dances until he spontaneously combusts, which is exactly what you feel like doing when you hear neighbors singing karaoke. Dawn wakes up and starts singing about being ignored and stealing things, but is kidnapped by minions of a demon named Sweet, who looks like a jazz pimp. He wants to make her his queen in the underworld, which is illegal on so many levels we won't even list them. Meanwhile, Giles and Tara realize they need to leave their respective toxic partners in a heartbreaking duet. Spike tries to act tough and tells Buffy to stay away, but shows up 5 minutes later to help because his dignity died back in season 2. Buffy storms the Bronze nightclub and starts dancing frantically until she smokes, revealing at the song's climax that her idiot friends pulled her out of heaven, not a hell dimension. The mood gets heavier than a dwarf's funeral, and Buffy starts burning alive from the intensity of the dance, but Spike catches her, stopping the protagonist from turning into barbecue. In the end, the demon suite reveals that the one who summoned him was the moron Xander, who thought a musical happy ending would be fun. The demon decides to leave because even he can't handle this much teenage drama. The gang ends up singing about not knowing what to do with life, and Buffy and Spike, ignoring every single red flag, devour each other in a kiss that screams couples therapy. After the traumatic musical, Buffy tries to pretend the kiss with Spike was the magic's fault, while a shark-headed lone shark collects a debt of kittens that the vampire owes. Yes, kittens. Willow, feeling the guilt hit harder than a cheap wine hangover, suggests doing a spell to make everyone forget their traumas, but Tara finds out and decides to break up. Willow promises to go a week without using magic, which for her is like asking a fish to stop swimming. Buffy begs Giles not to leave for England, but he is determined to cut the cord. Desperate and suffering from control withdrawal, Willow does the spell anyway, but as always, it goes wrong. The whole gang passes out and wakes up with total amnesia. Spike thinks he's Giles' son just because they're both British. Anya thinks she's Giles' fiancée, and Willow and Xander think they're a couple, proving the nightmare has no end. Buffy names herself Joan and discovers she has super strength when the Shark Loan Shark gang attacks the shop. Spike, now called Randy, discovers he's a vampire, but thinks he has a noble soul, which makes Buffy laugh in his face until she forgets her own name. The confusion escalates to the sewers, where Anya conjures bunny demons and Giles tries to save the day. Eventually, they break the spell crystal and the memories come back like a punch to the gut. Reality knocks on the door. Tara discovers she was manipulated again and leaves without looking back, leaving Willow crying in the bathroom like the magic junkie she is. Giles gets on the plane and abandoned ship before it sinks completely. In the end, Buffy, feeling lonelier than a gamer on Valentine's Day, ignores common sense and goes after Spike at the Bronze, where they kiss passionately, sealing the fate of yet another disastrous relationship. Our favorite Slayer decides to save a couple from a mugging, but the bleached vampire tries to help and discovers that the chip in his head doesn't like hitting humans, turning him into an amoeba with a migraine while the thugs run away laughing. After discussing their relationship like a divorced couple, Buffy goes home to find Willow, who felt so lonely she decided to turn the pet rat back into Amy, proving that loneliness makes people make terrible decisions. Meanwhile, the trio of Supreme Virgins steals a diamond and turns a security guard into a popsicle because apparently that's what nerds do when they're not being rejected on Tinder. Buffy tries to investigate but ends up trading punches with Spike again. The surprise comes when he hits back and the chip in his head decides to take a day off. The vampire thinks the system is broken and goes off all happy to bite the first girl in an alley, but gets shocked so hard he almost reboots his windows, standing there looking like a fool, understanding nothing. The redhead starts abusing magic to turn the Bronze into a mutant nightclub just because some guys were annoying, proving that giving power to unstable people is a recipe for disaster. Later, Spike corners Buffy in a dark alley and reveals that the chip only fails with her because she came back from the dead wrong, basically calling the girl defective merchandise. The fight escalates into a condemned house where they beat each other until the walls fall, but amidst the demolition, the hate turns into pent-up lust. Buffy pins him against the wall, and while the house structure crumbles like their dignity, the two start having violent falling through the rotting floor and destroying private property in the process. Buffy wakes up and full of regret, while Spike tries to convince her to stay using the infallible logic that sleeping with the Slayer is better than killing her. She rejects the Romeo of Darkness, threatens him with death if he tells anyone, and leaves. At home, Willow continues her journey to become the world's most annoying magic junkie, completely ignoring the existence of her annoying younger sister. Amy, the ex-rat, takes the redhead to meet a spell dealer named Rack, where Willow gets high on mana on the ceiling seeing gnomes. Buffy tries to feign normality looking for her friend, and ends up dragging Spike along on the search because apparently the humiliation of the previous night wasn't enough. Willow leaves the magic crack den hours later, completely batshit crazy, and decides to drive a car with her mind while Dawn screams in the passenger seat. Obviously, driving while high on magic goes wrong. They crash the car and a demon appears to finish the job. Buffy and Spike arrive to save the day, with the blonde beating the monster and the vampire playing babysitter. Amidst the chaos, Willow accidentally blows up the creature and starts crying, apologizing.
I'm sorry.
Buffy, realizing her friend has become a walking problem, gives an ultimatum, and the redhead decides to quit the habit, spending the night shaking in bed with abracadabra withdrawal. In the middle of the house detox cleaning, Buffy tries to hide the evidence that Willow was a magic junkie, but ends up finding Spike's lighter and remembering the night of hanky-panky in the demolished house. The vampire shows up asking for his lighter back and starts flirting heavily, trying to get his hands on the goods, but Xander arrives just in time to cut the mood with bad jokes. To make matters worse, a social worker shows up unexpectedly and finds the house looking like a crackhead witch's coven, Spike asking for a blanket, and Buffy looking like she hasn't slept in 3 incarnations. After cutting her hair in a psychotic break to try and change her life, the Slayer crosses paths with the trio, who test an invisibility ray on her. Buffy vanishes off the map. Literally. Taking advantage of the fact that no one can see her shame, she decides the best way to use her new powers is to break into Spike's crypt, throw him against the wall, and use his body as an immune park. Xander walks into the crypt looking for his friend and finds Spike in bed, sweating buckets and making suspicious pelvic movements while pretending to do push-ups, without realizing there's an invisible blonde bouncing on him. The vampire tries to maintain composure while Buffy has fun with the situation. The invisibility starts decomposing Buffy's molecules because the nerves don't read instruction manuals. Willow, using only her brain and zero magic, locates the Virgin's hideout. They kidnap the redhead, but invisible Buffy arrives raining blows on thin air. After a mime-style fight, they reverse the ray. Buffy becomes visible again, and the trio flees throwing smoke bombs. In the end, the Slayer admits that almost dying made her realize she wants to live, which is a big step for someone who spends her whole life in cemeteries. Adult life hits our Slayer like a brick to the face, forcing Buffy to accept a job at the Double Meat Palace. After watching a training video that looks like it was directed by a low-budget serial killer, she meets her boss Manny and learns that the secret to success is smiling while your soul leaves your your body. The main dish is the double meat medley, a stack of layers of beef and chicken that Buffy swallows with the same enthusiasm as chewing glass, frantically questioning what the secret ingredient of that slop is while Gary, a co-worker, serves an establishment-addicted lady wearing a suspicious wig. While Buffy tries to figure out if the meat is made of people or aliens, Spike shows up for that basic toxic visit, suggesting she quit the job because frying potatoes is more dangerous than fighting demons. But he ends up serving only for a quickie in the alley behind the restaurant. Later, Gary mysteriously disappears, and Buffy gets promoted to the grill, where she tries to interrogate colleagues about the contents of other people's sausages without success. At home, Anya receives a visit from an old vengeance demon friend, Halfrek, proving that birds of an evil feather flock together, while Xander just stands there existing uselessly in the corner. Buffy finally snaps when she finds a finger in the meat grinder and decides to make a scene in the middle of the restaurant screaming that Soylent Green is people, which obviously results in her firing. The whole gang gathers to investigate, and Willow uses science to analyze the meat since she's grounded from magic, discovering the secret ingredient is processed cellulose, aka glorified vegetables. But the real threat reveals itself when the wig customer takes off her disguise and shows she has a phallic lamprey coming out of her head, squirting paralyzing fluids on our heroine. Fortunately, Willow shows up to shove the creature into the meat grinder, turning the monster into gourmet ground beef. In the end, Buffy discovers the mystery was just cheap capitalism, begs for her job back, and accepts her mediocre fate of serving snacks. Our emotionally unstable protagonist and the bleached vampire continue their saga of love and hate on the crypt floor, discussing decoration while Spike pulls out handcuffs and asks if she trusts him, receiving a resounding never as an answer before they go back to grinding. Meanwhile, the trio of incel virgins, now hiding in a rented house, finishes their great invention, a device to turn women into slaves, because apparently talking to a female is out of the question for these losers. Warren, the leader of the rejects, tests the device on his ex-girlfriend Katrina, making her serve him like a master in a ridiculous maid outfit. Buffy tries to distract herself at the bronze, but ends up going to the balcony with Spike for another round of "no one can see us." But the nerds party ends when the device fails and Katrina regains consciousness, realizing she was about to be a and threatening to go to the police. Warren, in panic and proving to be the human garbage he is, smashes a bottle over her head and kills her, deciding to use the body to frame the Slayer. The diabolical plan involves using demons that distort time to make Buffy believe she beat the girl to death in the woods. Guilt consumes Buffy, who decides to turn herself into the police, but Spike tries to stop her, saying he took care of the body. The argument evolves into an aggressive therapy session where Buffy beats Spike's face repeatedly, taking out all her self-hatred on his undead flesh, while he accepts it all like the good masochistic simp he is. However, the police find the body in the river and rule it as saving everyone's skin. But the real blow comes when Tara reveals the results of the mystical tests. Buffy didn't come back wrong from death. She just has a slightly different molecular tan, meaning she is sleeping with Spike and being a horrible person by her own choice, with no curse to blame, making our heroine collapse in the ex-witch's lap, begging for there to be something wrong with her. Buffy starts the day bringing work home, literally sticking a sword into a demon that gets sucked into the blade, and decides to keep the weapon in her room as if it were a feng shui decoration piece. It's the Slayer's birthday, and the universe decides the gift will be absolute chaos. Dawn, the kleptomaniac younger sister starved for attention, steals a leather jacket at the mall because apparently her allowance doesn't cover teenage rebellion, and vents to a mysterious school counselor about feeling abandoned, wishing people would stop leaving. Be careful what you wish for, annoying girl. The party starts with the arrival of Sophie, the fast food colleague, and Richard, a normal suitor Xander arranged for Buffy, but the party turns into a social nightmare when Spike shows up with Clem, a demon with loose skin, and starts acting like the jealous and toxic ex-boyfriend, trading barbs with Buffy and trying to drag her into a dark corner. But the real fun begins when no one can leave the house. Tara, the only responsible adult in the room, attempts a spell to free the gang, but ends up releasing the demon from the sword Buffy brought, who starts slicing up the walls and poor Richard's chest. While chaos ensues, Anya decides to search Dawn's room and discovers the stash of stolen items, exposing the pint-sized thief to everyone. The school counselor reveals herself as Halfrek, the vengeance demon and Anya's friend, who trapped everyone there because she thought Dawn was being neglected. In the middle of the fight, Buffy breaks the sword, and the demon inside it, on her knee, and Halfrek tries to leave but realizes her own curse trapped her in the house too. With the infallible logic of, if I'm stuck, it's not fun, she lifts the spell and leaves, leaving Richard traumatized, heading to the hospital, and Dawn happy because finally her sister is forced to stay home with her. Buffy is living the American dream of scrubbing old grease off a grill, while her co-worker Todd talks endlessly about college before dumping all the work on her. On the way home, the Slayer smells so much like processed burgers and defeat that a vampire, upon trying to bite her neck, is disgusted by the cholesterol aroma and tries to flee, only to get sticked for insulting her hygiene. Upon arriving home, she finds Spike waiting with ulterior motives, but since she's ashamed to be seen with him inside the house, they decide to fertilize the lawn by rolling around in the grass in a horizontal physical therapy session. The next day, the humiliation continues when her bland ex-boyfriend Riley shows up at the diner. While she wears the most ridiculous uniform in history, but he didn't come back alone. He brought his wife Sam, who is basically Barbie, Mission Impossible, doctor, soldier, and expert in slicing demons. The trio goes out to hunt a Savolti demon, and Buffy feels like a complete amateur watching Sam dissect the beast with the precision she wished she used to cut the bun last night. They discover the demon laid eggs and that a dealer named the Doctor is guarding the nest. Guess who the Doctor is? Our favorite platinum vampire. Buffy breaks into Spike's crypt, finds the eggs in the basement, and, in a super healthy relationship argument, throws a live grenade into the middle of the room, blowing up the entire house and the demon babies. Riley, in a pathetic attempt at consolation, says Buffy is still a woman even being a failure at the moment. The perfect couple leaves in a helicopter, and Buffy decides she's used Spike enough as a boy and breaks up with him, leaving the vampire in the eternal friend zone because she needs a shred of dignity. The day of the wedding of the century has arrived, and Buffy and Willow are forced to wear bridesmaid dresses in a radioactive green shade that offends the vision of any living being. The party is an explosive mix between Xander's alcoholic and prejudiced family, and Anya's demon guests, proving that drunk relatives manage to be scarier than creatures from hell. In the middle of this social time bomb, an old man in a trench coat pulls Xander aside and claims to be him from the future, showing in a crystal ball a miserable life where Xander becomes an abusive husband who attacks Anya with a frying pan. While Spike tries to make Buffy jealous by bringing a Molgoth as a date, Buffy tells him he's wasting his time and he leaves with his tail between his legs. At the ceremony time, Willow discovers Xander fled like a cowardly rat in the rain. Buffy tries to distract the guests by juggling, which is as effective as trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Anya discovers the escape and freaks out, triggering a pitched battle between the drunk uncles and the demon guests. In the middle of the brawl, they discover the old man from the future was actually a vengeful demon ex-boyfriend of Anya who just wanted to ruin the party with fake visions. Buffy and Xander kill the beast, but Xander, in a moment of emotional brilliance, decides that even though the vision was fake, he is too scared to risk it and abandons Anya at the altar for real. She is devastated and crying until D'Hoffryn appears with an offer she can't refuse, giving her back her job as a vengeance demon, because nothing heals a broken heart better than torturing men for eternity. Determined to capture the trio of incel nerds, Buffy breaks into a house and gets stung by a demon with an unpronounceable name that launches her into a hallucinogenic trip. She wakes up in a mental institution where a doctor says the last 6 years of vampire hunting and apocalypses were a schizophrenic delusion. To make matters worse, her mother is alive in this reality and says her annoying sister Dawn doesn't even exist, which honestly sounds like paradise. Buffy keeps switching between the reality where she drools in the corner of a padded room and Sunnydale, where Spike and Xander have captured the demon and chained it in the basement. The asylum doctor convinces Buffy that to be cured, she needs to kill the hallucinations trapping her in that fantasy world. So, following this flawless logic, she knocks Xander out, ties him, Willow, and the non-existent Dawn in the basement, and releases the demon to devour her best friends. Tara arrives to save the day, but Buffy throws her down the stairs with the delicacy of a tractor. At the critical moment, her mother's hallucination tells her to fight the cruel world, but Buffy realizes she prefers the life where she beats up monsters and has real friends. She kills the demon, saves the tied-up gang, and decides to stay in Sunnydale. Cut to the final scene in the asylum, where the Buffy of that reality completely logs off and becomes a vegetable, proving that sanity is totally overrated when you can have super strength and constant romantic problems. While the trio of incel virgins plays Mario Kart in the cemetery and runs away with a magic floppy disk, Buffy continues her babysitting career fighting vampires, unaware that these nerds are turning Sunnydale into the most perverted version of Big Brother in history. Xander, that emotionally unstable carpenter who reminds you of your ex, tries to apologize to Anya, but when he admits he still loves her but is afraid to marry, she shows her demon face and tries to curse him. The problem is, she lost her knack for vengeance and can't even make him trip, so she has to outsource the job to other vengeance demons. While Willow and Tara schedule a coffee date to try and save the series' most dramatic lesbian relationship, Jonathan finishes the disc project only for the other two idiots to plan on betraying him. Buffy discovers there are cameras scattered all over the city, including one inside a garden gnome, proving privacy is just a myth created to sell curtains.
Oh my god.
Looks like someone's been keeping an eye on all your ins and outs.
What the who?
Spike enters the magic shop looking for a spell to cure heartbreak, but ends up finding Anya and a bottle of whiskey. The drinking session quickly escalates from lamenting about their toxic exes to a makeout session on top of the gaming table. The problem is, the trio's cameras are broadcasting everything live and in color. Willow discovers the video feed right when the amateur starts, and the entire main cast, including Xander, Buffy, and the kleptomaniac Dawn, watch from the front row. Xander, with all the hypocrisy of someone who left his fiancée at the altar, grabs an axe and runs to kill Spike. In the middle of the fight, Anya defends her right to sleep with whoever she wants, and the truth about Buffy and Spike is finally vomited in everyone's face. Xander is disgusted, Buffy is humiliated, and Spike almost makes a wish for vengeance before giving up. In the end, Tara decides to skip couples therapy and go straight to the physical part with Willow, proving that at least someone in this episode gets a happy ending. Willow and Tara are in the honeymoon phase in bed, discussing gossip about Buffy's life as if they were two aunts knitting. Meanwhile, Buffy invades the nerd's lair, but almost gets turned into ground beef by giant saws, because the villains fled to play with the orbs of Nezla Khan, which grant super strength and probably compensate for the size of something else of theirs. Xander continues his self-pity tour through the city bars until he sees the trio, now jacked up on magic, beating up civilians. He tries to be a hero and gets tossed aside like a rag doll. Later, Spike decides to commit the biggest mistake of his own life and tries to force Buffy to admit she loves him through a physical attack in the bathroom, proving the chip in his head doesn't prevent toxic stupidity. He realizes the mess he made and decides to leave town on a motorcycle to find a soul, because apparently remorse hit hard. Warren, drunk on power and magic testosterone, robs an armored truck and almost kills the Slayer, but Jonathan, in the only useful moment of his life, warns Buffy to destroy Warren's orbs. She smashes his balls with gusto, leaving the villain impotent and humiliated before he flees flying with a jetpack, while his idiot partner hits his face on the ceiling. The next day, the mood seems like reconciliation in the Summers' backyard, with Xander and Buffy making up, but Warren, who doesn't know how to lose, comes back with a firearm because magic didn't work. He shoots indiscriminately, hits Buffy in the chest, and, in a moment of pure script cruelty, shoots through the window, hitting Tara in the back. Her blood splatters on Willow's shirt, and while Xander tries to plug the hole in Buffy, Willow holds her girlfriend's lifeless body and her eyes turn red, signaling that the Good Witch has just left the server. While Buffy is rushed to the hospital with an extra hole in her body, Willow tries to summon Osiris to resurrect Tara, but the god of death informs her that natural deaths by stray bullets are non-refundable. Willow, now fueled by pure hatred and lesbian revenge, screams Osiris out of the room and decides to handle things the hard way. At the demon bar, Warren is bragging to everyone that he killed the Slayer, laughing like a maniac until he finds out Buffy survived and that he now has a massive target on his back. Willow breaks into the magic shop, drains all the knowledge from the dark magic books directly into her brain, going instant dark goth, and heads out to hunt down the murderous nerd. She arrives at the hospital, heals Buffy with a wave of her hand, and declares it's showtime. Xander and Buffy try to play moral compass while driving after her, but Willow hijacks the car with her mind because she has no time for ethics lectures. She intercepts a bus Warren was using to flee, only to discover it was just a robot, which only fills fuels her rage bar even further. Buffy and Xander try to argue that killing is wrong, but Willow takes them both down and vanishes. While Dawn weeps beside Tara's cold body, Willow finally corners the real Warren in the forest. He tries to use magical axes and shields, but Willow is basically a vengeful goddess now. She binds the bastard in vines, magically stitches his mouth shut to stop him from spouting nonsense, and decides to explain Tara's pain in a practical manner. With the coldness of a psychopathic coroner, she slowly drives the bullets she extracted from Buffy into Warren's chest, making him feel every millimeter. When the heroes arrive to try to stop her, Willow casually says she's bored and, in an act of artistic brutality, turns the villain into a walking slab of raw meat before incinerating him into complete non-existence. 1 down, 2 to go. While Buffy and Xander try not to lose their lunch, they realize Willow is on a magical bad trip and coming for the other 2 virgin nerds currently in jail. Anya, realizing Willow's magical Uber is going to take a while, teleports to the jail to try and save the idiots. At the police station, Willow arrives knocking down cops like bowling pins and decides walls are merely social suggestions, demolishing everything with her mind. But when she peers through the hole, she realizes the cell is empty, lets out a scream that would make a banshee reach for earplugs, and knocks Anya out with a bolt. Meanwhile, Xander, finally doing something useful, steals a squad car and flees with the nerds and Buffy, starting a low-budget version of Fast and Furious. Willow refuses to lose the race and mentally hijacks a massive truck, driving from the roof like the queen of highway chaos until her magic battery runs dry.
She's draining. She's whatting?
Meanwhile, in an African cave, Spike is fighting against Budman, proving he'll do anything to get that big powerful thing back. Willow decides to pay a visit to her magic dealer, Rack. He tries a cheap seduction game calling her Strawberry, but Willow flips the script, drains all his life force like a straw in a milkshake, and leaves looking like she just snorted the entire phone book. Dawn tries to play hero, but only finds the dried up corpse and a black-veined Willow who threatens to turn her sister-in-law into cosmic glitter. Buffy arrives to stop the fratricide, and Willow teleports them to the magic shop to start the brawl. Xander tries to save the nerds while Buffy gets beaten like a drum. After knocking everyone out and declaring herself the supreme goddess of the universe, Willow is ready to finish the job, but is interrupted by a green glow and the triumphant entrance of Giles, back from England ready to teach some manners via magic. Giles arrives handing out power like Oprah, but Willow is too high on dark magic to care about a family intervention. The British librarian traps her in a mystical bubble and takes the chance to catch up with Buffy, laughing hysterically at how everyone's life has turned into total garbage, including Xander getting left at the altar and Buffy sleeping with the peroxide blonde one. But Willow, using telepathy, convinces Anya to release the bindings, breaks free, and decides she wants to play demolition. She starts setting everything on fire, forces Giles to fight, and reveals she's going to end the world because according to her there's too much pain. The classic emo teenager excuse, but with nuclear power. Meanwhile, Xander and Dawn are walking with the fugitive nerds, and Xander, in a moment of social brilliance, tells his little sister that Spike tried to Buffy, making the mood heavier than this episode's script. In Africa, Spike continues to be tortured with beetles burrowing into his skin, screaming louder than a fan at a K-pop concert. Back in Sunnydale, Willow siphons the magic Giles borrowed and unleashes an apocalypse inside a satanic temple that erupts from the ground, while Buffy and Dawn battle the earthbound minions. But who shows up to save the day? The carpenter with no powers. Xander walks up to Willow in the middle of the magical hurricane and uses the most powerful weapon of all, an embarrassing speech about yellow crayons and unconditional love. Willow, realizing he's too pathetic to kill, collapses in tears and reverts to being the weepy redhead we know. Buffy climbs out of a hole in the ground, realizing Dawn is alive again and ready to step up as the responsible big sister, while the world narrowly avoids ending. In the African cave, Spike wins the final round and demands his prize. The demon plunges a hand into his chest and returns the vampire's soul, guaranteeing the blonde will suffer for all eternity, exactly as he asked. After a random girl gets stabbed in Istanbul just to set the mood, we return to Sunnydale where Buffy is training Dawn, because apparently nepotism works in vampire hunting. Meanwhile, Willow is in England in magical rehab with Giles, learning to meditate and not people when she gets stressed. In Sunnydale, they've reopened the high school right on top of the Hellmouth because the urban planning department in this town is clearly run by demons or highly incompetent civil servants. Buffy accompanies Dawn on her first day and meets Principal Wood, who is suspiciously charming. In the bathroom, Buffy finds a talisman and ghosts of dead people telling her she's a failure, which is news to no one. And in another moment, when Dawn and a friend enter the bathroom, undead bodies burst up from the floor and try to grab them, causing the bathroom floor to give way and sending them crashing down into the basement. Buffy finds Spike, who looks like a schizophrenic hobo talking to walls and trying to rip his own heart out because having a soul is too boring. After beating up some manifested zombies and Xander smashing the talisman, Buffy accepts a job at the school to keep an eye on her sister and the impending apocalypse. In the end, in the dark basement, Spike gets a motivational visit from the primordial evil. The entity puts on a talent show by shapeshifting, cycling through Warren, Glory, Adam, the mayor, Drusilla, and the master in a fashion show of past villains, before turning into Buffy's face and stating it's all about power. The big bad has arrived, and he has multiple personality disorder. In Frankfurt, a random woman dies screaming catchphrases about things being underground just to establish the mood, while in Sunnydale, Spike decides to roleplay Gollum in the school basement, talking to rats and freaking out about the architecture. The next day, Buffy starts her new job as a school counselor, a position for which she has 0 academic qualifications, while Willow faces her British depression with Giles before heading home. But the real plot kicks in when a generic blonde named Nancy watches her dog get vacuumed into the sidewalk concrete. She runs to the town's only trouble magnet, Xander, who takes her to Buffy's house. The Scooby Gang assembles, and surprise, a cleaned-up Spike appears offering help. Dawn, ever the diplomat, threatens to set him on fire if he lays a finger on her sister. While investigating the canine crime scene, a giant worm bursts from the ground roaring. The beast is actually Nancy's ex-boyfriend, who turned into a Sluggoth demon thanks to a casual visit from Anya. Spike tries to contain the vengeful Anya but gets beaten like a drum until he decides to impale the beast with a metal pipe. The problem is, the worm turns human again at the last second, activating Spike's chip and frying his brain once more. He mutters the dead German woman's catchphrase and flees to the nearest church. Buffy finds the platinum vampire in the church, babbling nonsensical metaphors. He decides the best form of communication is to unzip his pants and offer her full service right there on the holy altar. Before Buffy can process this indecent and sacrilegious offer, he hugs a cross, revealing he got his soul back and is now feeling the guilt of centuries burning his pale skin, while Buffy cries, understanding nothing. Sunnydale Airport becomes the stage for a bad rom-com where nobody meets. Buffy, Xander, and Dawn wait for Willow but don't see her, while Willow gets off the plane and doesn't see anyone, thinking she's been abandoned by her degenerate friends. She goes home, finds it empty, and decides to enjoy a solo depression, unaware her friends are in the same house, invisible to her, and vice versa, because basic communication is the rarest skill in this group. Anya, now an ex-demon and current hoarder of magical junk, tries to help Willow locate a creature that's been skinning people but refuses to teleport. Dawn, proving she knows how to use Google, finds the Gnarl Demon, a disgusting creature that paralyzes victims with its fingernails to eat their skin like sliced cheese. Buffy drags the schizophrenic Spike along to sniff out the monster's trail to a cave, where Willow is already being cornered. In the invisibility confusion, the group enters, doesn't see the redhead, and the demon paralyzes useless Dawn. They flee with the frozen sister, locking Willow inside, serving their friend up to the monster on a silver platter. Gnarl begins the tasting session, while engaging in psychological bullying. When the penny finally drops, Buffy returns to the cave and kills the pest. The invisibility spell breaks, Willow regenerates with meditation, and everyone goes back to being dysfunctional friends with their skin intact. Buffy wakes up in a coffin, a normal Tuesday, the dead woman, and goes to school to listen to teenagers complain about life. But the boredom ends when a soft goth named Cassie announces she's going to die next Friday. Buffy, wearing a white shirt begging for a coffee stain, decides to play hero and investigate who wants to kill the girl, going through her alcoholic father and the rejected incel Mike, who just wanted to take the girl to the dance. Meanwhile, a group of idiots in red cloaks is playing satanic Harry Potter in the gym. They kidnap Cassie to offer her to a demon in exchange for infinite riches, because apparently the stock market is too volatile. Buffy crashes the ritual, reveals she's the Slayer, and kicks the sect leader Peter in the balls. A giant demon appears demanding payment, but Spike, in a rare moment of lucidity, helps cut Cassie's ropes, and Buffy burns the monster with a torch, sending the creature back to hell. Peter, the financial genius, demands his money from the toasted demon and gets a fatal bite as a bonus before the creature turns to dust. Buffy and Cassie walk out victorious, thinking they cheated fate. The blonde gives a motivational speech about how one person can make a difference, but the universe has a sadistic sense of humor. Cassie has a congenital heart attack and drops dead instantly. In the end, Buffy discovers you can save someone from demons and rituals, but not from bad genetics. While Buffy and Xander help Dawn try not to be a complete social outcast at school, they debate whether Anya is a threat or just a needy ex-girlfriend, unaware that said ex is busy decorating an entire frat house in blood. We flash back to medieval Scandinavia, where we discover Anya used to be Odd, a devoted wife promising sex and rabbits to her husband Olaf, until she found out he was sleeping around at the local tavern. Like any rational person, she turns the cheater into a giant troll, attracting the attention of demonic headhunter Dahofrin, who offers her a lifetime contract in corporate revenge. Back in the present, Willow tries to go back to college but stumbles upon Anya's carnage and protects the survivor from a giant demon spider using dark magic and a lot of goth girl attitude. When the news reaches Buffy, she decides that being the Slayer means being the law, completely ignoring the whining of Xander, who still thinks he can fix the murderous demoness with a chat. He tries to stop the inevitable, but Buffy Anya through with a sword, proving that an ex-lover's spat in Sunnydale is a bit more visceral. But the party is interrupted by Dahofrin, who shows up like a sadistic reality show host. Anya, regretting turning the fraternity into a butcher shop, begs to undo the spell. The boss accepts the payment in Demon's soul, but instead of killing Anya, he incinerates her friend Halfrek in front of everyone, teaching them that in the infernal corporate world, HR is brutal. Anya reverts to being human and walks away alone, rejecting Xander's useless comfort, now having to face the greatest terror of all, looking for a job without magical powers. Spike gets evicted from the school basement and, like an inconvenient relative, moves in with Xander, creating the most uncomfortable sitcom in history. Meanwhile, Dawn decides to have an existential crisis about love until she lays eyes on the generic school quarterback, RJ, and falls instantly in love. Buffy tries to play responsible big sister and investigates the boy, but ends up falling victim to his supernatural charm and decides the best way to protect her sister is to test the durability of a classroom desk with him. The situation escalates to a level of collective stupidity when Willow and Anya also fall under the spell of the kid's magic varsity jacket. Now we have the Slayer planning to kill the principal with a rocket launcher and the ex-demon robbing banks for love. Dawn, realizing she can't compete with this level of adult psychopathy, decides to lay on the train tracks to prove her love, because teenage drama is never enough. Spike and Xander, the only ones immune to the tacky jacket's magical testosterone, rush to save the day. Buffy regains her sanity in time to pull her sister off the tracks before she becomes pate. In the end, they burn the cursed jacket in the fireplace. Dawn apologizes for being insufferable, and when the group asks what Anya almost did, she changes the subject from her federal crimes by offering ice cream, proving that culinary bribery solves any legal problem. On a busy night, Buffy is patrolling and finds a vampire who, instead of trying to kill her outright, decides to conduct a free Freudian therapy session, since he was a psychology student. Between punches and a deep analysis of the Slayer's loneliness and abandonment issues, Buffy finally accepts she needs treatment, but resolves this by driving a through the amateur therapist's heart. Meanwhile, at the Summers house, Dawn is alone fighting a low-budget poltergeist that trashes the house and cuts the phone line. She has visions of her dead mother, Joyce, who appears to warn her that Buffy will turn against her, planting the seed of posthumous family discord. Andrew and Jonathan return to town on a mission to dig up an evil seal in the school basement. Andrew, being the useless doormat that he is, follows orders from Warren's ghost and his best friend, spilling Jonathan's blood to open the portal, proving male friendship is fragile next to the promise of power. In the library, Willow receives a visit from what appears to be Cassie's ghost, bringing messages from Tara, but the conversation changes tone when the entity suggests Willow kill herself to avoid killing others, revealing itself to be the first evil in disguise. And to cap the night off, Spike takes a girl home after a deep chat, only to show that vampire rehab is a sham, and bites her neck on the sidewalk, ensuring the body count keeps rising. While Spike practices recreational gardening by burying a body and humming folk songs, London decides the mortality rate needs to go up, and people start dropping dead, including acquaintances of Giles. In Sunnydale, Willow explains to Dawn that a malignant entity is playing The Sims with everyone's minds. While Xander and Buffy debate whether Spike's chip malfunctioned or if he's gone vegan again, Spike comes home with the coldness of an ex-husband in court. Anya is drafted to babysit this temperamental vampire, but her genius plan to search his room fails miserably, so she tries the old tactic of offering her body in exchange for information. Spike refuses with suspicious politeness, proving either he's changed or Anya is losing her touch. On the street, Spike starts hearing hypnotic music and follows a random blonde. Buffy activates jealous stalker mode and follows her crush, only to watch him drain the girl in an alley and enjoy the flavor. But the plot twist strikes. The Spike who killed the girl turns to dust and transforms into Buffy herself. It's the first evil playing cosplay to drive everyone crazy. The real Spike arrives home swearing he's innocent, but Buffy throws it in his face that she saw him having a forbidden snack. He tries to leave, but Xander blocks the door and gets a punch in the face as a bonus, just to learn his place in the food chain. Spike goes to the Bronze to drink to forget, but ends up fighting and staking a vampire he sired himself, throwing her off the balcony with zero remorse. Meanwhile, the copy of Buffy continues tormenting his broken mind. When the real Buffy finally finds the blonde in the basement, he's having a nervous breakdown, surrounded by newborn vampires sprouting from the ground like weeds. The brawl breaks out. Spike begs to be through the heart because he can't handle the drama anymore. But Buffy decides he's too useful to die right now. Across the ocean, Giles finds a scene of massacre, only to see an axe flying toward his bald head. Xander tries to fix the broken window while the girls gossip about the impending danger called Spike. Andrew, the nerd left over from the trio of stooges, wanders around town hearing voices from beyond, being trained by Warren's ghost to be a second-rate villain. Warren insists Andrew is crucial to the plan, which proves the plan is doomed to fail. At the Summers house, Buffy decides to tie Spike to a chair, satisfying unspoken while trying to comfort him. Buffy calls the Watchers Council, but they are as useful as an ashtray on a motorcycle and say Giles is missing. Spike starts feeling that basic hunger for human blood and tries to bite the Slayer, proving bondage doesn't solve everything. Willow suggests animal blood, and Andrew goes to the butcher shop to buy dinner, but is intercepted by Willow, who uses her reputation as a psycho witch to drag the nerd into interrogation. Xander and Anya try playing good cop, bad cop with Andrew, but end up fighting each other in a show of matrimonial incompetence. Buffy feeds Spike pig, which calms things down until the first evil shows up again messing with his head. Spike snaps, breaks the bond, smashes through the wall, and bites poor Andrew's neck, who just wanted to be important. Buffy kicks the vampire's skull until he passes out. While Principal Wood buries Jonathan's body on top of a mystical seal at the school, Buffy's house is invaded by blind acrobatic monks called Harbingers. The general brawl destroys what was left of the furniture. Later, the Watchers Council decides to cosplay as fireworks, and the entire building explodes in London, eliminating the bureaucracy once and for all.
For by wise counsel, you shall make your war.
In the school basement, Spike wakes up tied to a wheel, where the first evil uses Buffy's face to mock him, while his blood opens the hellmouth to release a roided-up vampire that makes the others look like extras. The Scooby Gang licks their wounds while Spike continues to be psychologically tortured by the first evil, who swaps skins between Buffy and Drusilla to try and break the vampire's spirit. Andrew, now the group mascot, leads Buffy and the girls to the seal at the school to bury it with shovels, but they find Principal Wood doing the same thing in an awkward who buried what moment. At home, Willow attempts a locator spell that goes terribly wrong, creates an explosion, and almost kills everyone, proving unsupervised magic is dangerous. Giles appears out of nowhere bringing 3 random teenagers called potential slayers, explaining that the Big Bad's plan is to kill all the candidates before getting to Buffy and ending the line. It's basically mass extermination by appointment. Buffy and Giles go to a cave to investigate and run into the Turok-Han, an uber vamp who took so many steroids that wooden stakes just tickle him. Buffy gets beaten like a rag doll and barely escapes with her life. Giles explains that this breed of vampire is the elite, while the normal ones are just appetizers. Annabelle, the potential with the lowest survival IQ, decides to run away in the middle of the night and, to absolutely no one's surprise, is intercepted and killed by the Ubervamp in record time. Buffy arrives too late and gets beaten again, being buried under steel beams while the monster didn't even break a sweat. In the basement, the first evil continues provoking Spike, but he refuses to break because he's too much of a simp for the Slayer. Slayer. Buffy, all broken and bandaged, comes downstairs and delivers a motivational speech, declaring war against the ultimate evil and warning that if she's going down, she's taking everyone with her on this runaway train. A random girl gets off the bus thinking she's in a horror movie and almost becomes an offering to hooded religious fanatics. But Buffy appears to save the day and take the poor wretch to the most overcrowded house in Sunnydale. While Willow tries to sleep on the hard floor, Kennedy, an insufferable rich brat who loves talking about her inheritance, won't shut up and tries to drag the witch into bed, proving rich people don't understand the concept of personal space. Downstairs, the useless Andrew remains tied up making unasked for comments, suggesting they speak louder while the rest want to sleep. With group morale lower than Xander's dignity, Giles decides to take Anya to visit a giant, disgusting eye in a parallel dimension, because apparently staring at slimy eyeballs solves existential problems. In the S&M cave, Spike finally gets tired of being a punching bag, breaks free from the chains, and runs thinking Buffy came to save him, but runs into the first evil cosplaying as the blonde to torture his psyche. Back at the house, a buffed-out vampire known as a Turok Han smashes through the door. Willow throws up a magical barrier, and Buffy orders everyone to run to a construction site, the safest and most sensible place to hide from indestructible monsters. When the pumped-up vampire arrives for the massacre, Buffy decides to stop getting beaten and use the scenery to her advantage, a wire around the beast's neck until she pops his head like a cork from a champagne bottle. With the monster turned to dust, she runs to the cave, frees the real Spike, and takes him home, proving there's nothing like a to lift the team's spirits. Buffy decides to teach self-defense using the pedagogical tactic of beating up Spike in front of the students, straddling him and pinning him to the ground with a tension that leaves the teenagers unsure if it's a fight or foreplay in an adult movie. Meanwhile, Willow casts a GPS spell to find the new Slayer, but the magic glitches and illuminates Dawn's face. The little sister panics thinking she's become the protagonist and flees through the window, terrified of having to save the world, since her only skills are screaming and getting kidnapped. She bumps into Amanda, a random nerd who claims she was attacked, and the two hide in the school because apparently no one in that place has any self-preservation instinct. Buffy takes the candidates to a demon bar and asks Clem to make that loose lasagna face to scare the girls. At the school, Dawn and Amanda get cornered by a vampire, and Dawn tries to use a fire extinguisher that fails miserably, proving her luck remains in the negative. Buffy arrives, tosses the vampire around to give a practical lesson, and, in a moment of pure maternal irresponsibility, leaves the girls alone with the monster. Dawn uses chemicals to set fire to the blind monks, but realizes the true Slayer is Amanda, who stabs the vampire with the ease of someone skipping class. Xander finds Dawn depressed about not being special and gives a motivational speech about how cool it is to be the useless one in the group who only serves to observe, kissing her on the forehead to seal the club of powerless sidekicks. Giles decides to take the Slayer kindergarten on a field trip to the desert, but Kennedy fakes the flu just to stay home alone and try to cop a feel on Willow. Meanwhile, as Buffy visits Spike in the basement, the chip in the vampire's head starts frying his neurons, making the poor guy flop around like a fish out of water. Kennedy drags Willow out for drinks, and after a few rounds, plants a kiss on the witch. The problem is, Willow's trauma is so massive that the kiss instantly transforms her into Warren. Now Buffy has to deal with her best friend looking like an aggressive psycho nerd on the loose in the house. The group starts getting paranoid that Giles actually died and turned into the first evil, so Xander and his troop of useless tagalongs rush to the desert just to grope the old man and confirm he is solid, very much alive, and annoyed. Amy, the jealous witch turned rat, reappears, revealing she cast a hex on Willow because she manages to be evil and still have friends. Buffy and Spike break into the ruins of the Initiative looking for meds, but run into a demon. While Spike's chip makes him breakdance in pain on the floor, Buffy kills the monster solo. Suddenly, military guys pop out of the walls offering free surgery for the vampire. In the backyard, Kennedy decides the best way to cure the magic is to make out with Warren, proving she'll hook up with anything that breathes, and manages to bring Willow back to normal before she buys an automatic weapon. Giles, the British librarian who should be in a nursing home sipping tea, takes the potential slayers to the middle of nowhere to brag about his heightened senses, omitting the small detail that he only heard the villain coming running because the creature's shoes were squeakier than wet flip-flops. In the middle of this lame motivational speech, Spike decides to test the physics of celestial bodies and tackles the old man, thinking he is the first evil. Giles, with the calm of someone who has dealt with idiot teenagers for years, explains that if he were an intangible ghost, Spike's shoulder would have gone through his chest, proving that intelligence isn't a requirement to be a vampire. Meanwhile, Buffy decides to ignore the impending apocalypse to have dinner with Principal Wood, because nothing says savior of the world like picking out wine while people die. Xander, keeping up his infallible tradition of being a trouble magnet, also lands a date. And, surprise to absolutely no one, the girl is a demon who ties him up over the cursed seal in the school and tries to shove a knife into his ribs, proving Xander has the worst taste in women in human history. Andrew, the virgin nerd mooching off everyone, tries to play 007 by wearing a wire to record the first evil. But, being the strategic genius he is, he forgets that ghosts can't be recorded, and the villain spots the trap instantly, showing him visions of Jonathan rotting just to traumatize the fragile boy. Buffy and Spike rush to save the useless Xander again, turning the school into a war zone. During the brawl, Wood realizes Spike is a vampire but decides to save that info for his diary. In the end, the first evil appears in Wood's office bathroom cosplaying as his dead mother and drops the gossip of the century. It was Spike who killed his mommy, Nikki. Wood accepts the spoiler with a restrained psycho smile. The first evil invades Buffy's dreams to tell her she isn't enough, which is basically the same thing her mother used to say. At school, Principal Wood hands Buffy an emergency bag and tells her to focus on her actual job of killing monsters, while Andrew introduces himself as a guest hostage and draws useless maps on a whiteboard. Outside, Kennedy trains the rookies with the gentleness of a Navy SEAL drill sergeant, calling everyone maggots. But the pressure is too much for Chloe, who decides to herself in the bathroom after a reverse motivational chat from the villain. Instead of offering condolences, Buffy decides to give the most toxic speech in history, calling the dead girl weak and saying Anya is only good for taking up space and wasting oxygen. Tired of losing, Buffy opens the magic bag and jumps into a dimensional portal, leaving everyone in a panic. She lands in a desert and meets 3 creepy old men who reveal the origin of the Slayers. They used to grab girls and essence of a demon into them. They try to force this black pulsating thing onto Buffy, promising more power, but she refuses to be by ancient magic and beats the crap out of the perverted old geezers. Meanwhile, Spike needs to kill a demon to bring the blonde back. Buffy returns from the portal traumatized, warning that she turned down the old man's power-up, but had a vision of an infinite army of uber-vamps coming to turn Sunnydale into an all-you-can-eat buffet. Andrew decides reality is too boring and starts filming his own documentary, imagining himself as a British lord in a fancy library instead of a sweaty nerd in a bathroom. He films the Slayers at breakfast, mentally editing it so Buffy looks eating cereal, and Spike appears shirtless because his priorities are clearly messed up. At school, the seal of Denzilkar starts leaking energy, turning the students into extras from a prison riot movie.
Hey! Hey! Break it up! Get to class.
A girl cries because the mirror called her fat, and a kid literally explodes from stress. It's total chaos, but Xander and Anya decide the best way to handle the end of the world is to lock the door and aggressively uglies. Andrew, being the creepy voyeur he is, almost films the act of reproduction, but Buffy drags him by the collar to settle the score in the school basement. Down there, Buffy forces Andrew to tell the truth about what happened in Mexico. He tries to lie that it was a heroic accident, but the truth is, he stabbed his best friend Jonathan due to psychological pressure. Buffy, fed up with this pathetic virgin's lies, pulls a knife and says the seal needs blood to close. She holds the nerd over the glowing hole while he screams and cries, admitting he's a cowardly murderer and a piece of human garbage. His tears of despair hit the seal and surprise, the thing closes. Buffy reveals she only needed the tears and was never going to kill the idiot, pulling off the biggest bluff of her career. The episode ends with Andrew filming himself in the bathroom again, finally accepting he'll probably die a virgin and alone, turning off the camera with the dignity he has left, which is zero. We flash back to New York, 1977, where Spike is trading blows in the rain with Nikki Wood, but because he's a sentimental idiot, he decides to leave the Slayer alive because a kid showed up to ruin the timing of the murder. Back in the present, where nobody showers properly, Buffy, Nikki's son, and the Platinum Vampire are in a generic fight against extras, and Spike saves Principal Wood's life, unaware that this guy holds a grudge harder than a scorned ex-girlfriend, while the blonde tries to figure out how to turn off the musical trigger that turns Spike into a killing machine. Giles decides to cosplay as Judas and conspires with Wood to eliminate the vampire, proving that trusting British librarians is a fatal mistake. Willow uses a magic stone to make Spike relive his traumatic memories of his mother in a forced therapy session that would make Freud excited, where we see the old lady tried to seduce her son after turning into a vampire. While Willow bails to Los Angeles, Wood lures Spike into a garage full of crosses and starts playing the cursed song, thinking he's going to avenge Mommy. Wood beats on Spike, who is having Oedipus Rex flashbacks, but the vampire realizes his mother actually loved him, unlike Wood's mom, who preferred dying at work to raising the kid. With this emotional epiphany, Spike breaks the conditioning, beats the hell out of the principal, and says he's only letting him live because he's feeling generous. Buffy realizes Giles was stalling her with a lame moral lecture in a cemetery, rushes to save the day, and warns that if the principal looks at Spike the wrong way again, she'll handle the problem herself. In the end, the blonde leaves Giles talking to himself, proving the friendship died faster than the extras in this episode. A random girl is running through the woods thinking she's in a horror movie, accepts a ride from a trucker dressed as a priest, and finds out the hard way that he's a psycho named Caleb who enjoys branding human cattle and stomachs. Meanwhile, Xander has a wet dream about the Slayers in training, proving the lack of an eye doesn't affect libido, but is woken up to unclog the toilet, returning to his mediocre reality. Faith reappears. There's some teenage jealousy because Buffy is hooking up with Spike, and everyone feels uncomfortable with the tension in the basement. Caleb sends a message saying he has something of Buffy's, and the blonde, making a tactical decision worthy of an amoeba, decides to take all the unprepared girls to attack a vineyard. The group arrives at the vineyard expecting grapes and finds only pain and suffering. Caleb reveals himself to be a misogynistic Superman who tosses Buffy aside like a rag doll and breaks Rona's arm just for fun. The situation spirals out of control faster than diarrhea on a bus trip, and when Xander tries to play hero and yell for a retreat, Caleb decides to perform eye surgery without anesthesia, transforming the carpenter into an official pirate. Spike manages to save what's left of the group before they all turn into Slayer pate. Buffy wanders the streets alone, feeling the weight of having led a massacre, while Caleb brags to the first evil, using Buffy's body to mock her humiliating defeat. The whole town is fleeing Sunnydale like it's a Black Friday sale, and even the demon Clem decides it's time to get out of Dodge. Buffy, stubborn as a mule, stays in town thinking she can solve everything with her fists. While Willow cries at the bedside of one-eyed Xander, the potentials begin to question the leader's sanity, which is fair, considering she just threw half of them into a meat grinder. Caleb appears at the school, throws Buffy through a glass window, and leaves her knocked out on the floor, proving the universe really hates the protagonist. While Spike and Andrew go on an awkward motorcycle road trip to investigate a lead and eat onion blossoms, Faith decides to be the cool mom and takes the girls to get wasted at the Bronze, because alcohol is the solution to trauma. The police arrive to beat up Faith. Buffy shows up to save the day and give a lecture, but gets thrown in her face that she screwed up too. Back at the house, Buffy tries to convince everyone to return to the vineyard. The group finally grows a brain and rebels. Giles, Faith, Willow, Xander, and even the useless sister Dawn vote to kick Buffy out of her own house. Democracy works in the worst way possible, and Buffy is kicked to the curb crying, while Faith gets stuck with the burden of leading this band of misfits to certain death. With Buffy kicked out of the house by her own ungrateful friends, the rest of the loser gang gathers to debate who rules the roost now that Mama Bear is gone. Faith tries to take control pretending she knows what she's doing, but the power goes out because even the electric company decided to bail on this cursed town. Meanwhile, Buffy breaks into an empty house, practices the art of squatting, and convinces the owner to flee, securing her new homeless residence. Back in the basement of depression, a tongueless monster is captured, and Andrew, the most useless nerd in the group, serves as a spiritual translator, while Spike loses his patience. The blonde vampire realizes his companions are traitors and decides to give a moral lecture, which is ironic coming from a guy with no soul. When Faith tries to act tough, Spike physically humiliates her, rubs her face in the table, and leaves to sniff out Buffy's trail like a bloodhound in heat. While Spike finds Buffy curled up in bed cosplaying deep depression, the first evil decides to play body swap, appearing to Faith as the dead mayor and to Caleb, instigating chaos. But since it's the last night before the apocalypse, everyone decides it's time to release the pent-up tension. Faith and Principal Robin hit the sack, Willow and Kennedy get busy, and Xander and Anya reminisce about old times. The first evil watches all this with sick voyeurism while Caleb brags about having his strength, suggesting he swallowed a lot of power that night. The next day, Buffy finds her courage at rock bottom, invades the vineyard, and discovers a secret passage. While she dives into the unknown, Faith finds a mysterious box in the sewers, but instead of treasure or a new toy, the box goes tick-tock. Buffy pulls a red scythe from a stone like King Arthur in a miniskirt, leaving Caleb shocked by the size and girth of her new tool. The villain tries to attack, but the first evil orders him to retreat because beating up a woman armed with a magical relic wasn't in the contract. Meanwhile, in the sewers, Faith's group survives the explosion only to be surrounded by Ubervamps, proving her leadership is as effective as a leaky umbrella. But of course, Buffy arrives at the last second, swings her big thick scythe, and decapitates the monsters, saving the useless potentials and reclaiming the throne of prom queen. Xander, trying to be useful for the first time in his life, kidnaps Dawn to take her far away, but gets beaten by the girl herself with a taser to the neck, and she drives back. Buffy visits a pyramid in the cemetery where an old guardian appears just to explain the plot and die immediately at the hands of Caleb, who is now juiced up with the power of the First. When all seems lost, Angel appears from the shadows wanting to steal the show, but Buffy rejects the help and slices Caleb from crotch to neck. While Buffy plants a kiss on her undead ex-boyfriend, Spike watches everything from the shadows, feeling cucked harder and faster than his fangs can grow, muttering "that bitch" with all the rancor of a jealous ex. Angel and Buffy have a relationship talk in the middle of the apocalypse, with Angel acting like the boyfriend who can't move on and handing over a magic amulet he swears isn't cheap jewelry. Buffy sends him away with a ridiculous metaphor about her being cookie dough that hasn't finished baking, proving the pressure of the end of the world has fried her brain. Angel leaves frustrated, and Buffy gives the necklace to Spike, who accepts the consolation prize after seeing her kiss the other guy. On the morning of the final battle, Buffy hears the first evil's taunts and decides the best strategy is to hack the system's logic. Willow uses the magic scythe to perform a global spell, instantly transforming every potential girl in the world into a slayer. Willow's hair turns white like she saw a ghost, and suddenly, thousands of girls around the globe feel the power entering them full force. The battle at the Hellmouth turns into a complete zone. Vampires get dusted, people die, and Anya is in half by a random monster, ending her saga as a capitalist demon in a brutal and quick fashion. Spike, realizing the amulet is burning his soul, decides to turn into a human spotlight. He starts frying all the monsters and the scenery itself, yelling for Buffy to get out of there. When she says she loves him, he drops a truth bomb saying she's lying, and sacrifices himself in a blaze of glory, while the entire city of Sunnydale implodes into a giant sinkhole. The survivors look at the crater that used to be the city. Xander mourns Anya's death, and Giles remembers there is still another Hellmouth in Cleveland because the supernatural janitor job never ends. Dawn asks what they do now, and Buffy smiles, probably happy she doesn't have to work for free anymore.
What are we gonna do now?